The northernmost point of the empire is a place with lands that are notorious for their impassability and constant threat to life. The owner of this territory was Duke Filio Boreati, head of the Boreati family. From childhood, Filio had two very noticeable features. The first was that he was strikingly handsome, so much so that it struck you at first sight. And the second is his terrible character, for which he was nicknamed the Black Beast already at birth. His gaze was so piercing that it seemed he could kill with just his eyes. Glowing hair, dark eyes, sharp features, clearly defined cheekbones and collarbones created an almost frightening impression. He belonged to the rare number of ducal families that remained in the empire. He is the reason for women's sleepless nights, the most eligible bachelor in the empire. Having completed his business in the capital, the Duke began to prepare to return to the north. At the same time, he announced his intention to adopt a child. His assistant Lupa was horrified and decided that it was a stupid joke. But Filio only looked at him coldly, as if asking if he seemed to have time for such jokes. That's how it all started. All from one shelter in the east of the country. When the man appeared on the threshold, Anastasia was very scared. She screamed, not understanding who was standing in front of her and why he had come. Filio closed his eyes, unable to comprehend what was happening. Anastasia didn't stop screaming, but he still didn't understand what to do. The Duke was completely at a loss, not knowing how to behave properly with the child. The assistant noted that this was already a direct order from Filio and another personal record. This was the 5th visit to the orphanage, and each time the children began to cry as soon as they saw the Duke. Lupa hated his job more and more with each such visit. He couldn't understand at all why Filio had suddenly decided to take the child. The Duke only replied gloomily that it had not been long since his sword had shed its last blood. Lupa tried to remind that such words were extremely inappropriate here. After all, children are still very young and don't understand anything about such things. The Duke thought for a moment, and a moment came to mind when one of the men was telling how the day before his child had spoken a word for the first time. He then added that every time the baby says "Daddy," his heart rejoices, and the older brother tries his best to help the younger ones, which he is very proud of. But Filio replied with irritation that if he continued, his jaw would end up on the floor. A person should not be so happy. At the same time, he became curious whether the Duke was going to marry, but in response, he heard a rude wish for death. The man still tried to explain that when he had his own child, life would never be the same again. He believed that fatherhood was a true gift sent from above. However, the Duke himself did not share this opinion, although the man continued to insist. He said the children were so sweet and hoped that one day the Duke would understand what he was talking about. Probably now Filio saw all the children who were in this orphanage. Then he calmly said that they were moving on to the next shelter. At this time, Lupa's assistant thought that the Duke really could do with getting married. After all, he is the first candidate for an imperial wedding. As he left, Anastasia just ran into security. The man approached the Duke and apologized for not having had time to prepare for his visit properly. He explained that for the children, the opportunity to see the Duke is a real reward, because they are very kind and beautiful. He also added that winter is coming soon, and he is worried about whether the children will be able to survive it. Lupa thought to himself that this man was asking the Duke for support too openly. Moreover, it was clear from the premises that the locals were not particularly concerned about its condition. The next shelter, according to Lupa, is unlikely to be an exception. Suddenly, a scream was heard in the building, and no one understood what was happening. They saw a man holding the girl tightly. She screamed loudly to be let go, and breaking free ran away. The girl ran straight to Filio. The Duke turned around and immediately noticed her. She screamed and turned to him with a plea, calling him uncle. Everyone present was amazed. Anastasia looked straight at Filio Boreati and did not even cry. Moreover, her eyes and hair were strikingly similar to the features of the master's daughter. They were exactly the same as those of Duke Filio himself. One of the men immediately began to apologize, saying that they should hurry and take her away. But Filio stopped them, asking them to leave the girl where she was. He noted that this girl was not on the prepared list. The man began to make excuses, stating that the girl had no manners and often played pranks. It turns out that this man disobeyed the Duke. He made it clear that he wanted to see all children without exception. The man immediately fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. He tried to explain that they didn't want to show her precisely because of her character, but the Duke still decided to look at her. He asked her name. Anastasia replied that she did not have a name. The Duke was surprised that the orphanage did not give her a name, and the girl said that she was called by another name, but she hated that name. Lupa noticed that the girl looked bold and confident. He asked if she knew whose path she had dared to cross. Anastasia looked at him and replied that in all fairness, her head should be cut off. She really didn't expect such a turn of events and was very surprised. The girl involuntarily shuddered at what she heard, but despite this, she showed real courage. The Duke admitted that her old name did not suit her at all. He thought for a moment without saying a word. Then, after a pause, he said that the name Anastasia suited her much better. Filio said that Anastasia was now her new name, and from now on, that was what she would be called. Anastasia didn't understand why it was so long, and the Duke explained that Anastasia Boreati was a first and last name. If she decides to live in the estate, she will first need to hire a nanny before thinking about anything else. Filio suddenly picked her up in his arms, and Anastasia was very frightened by this sudden gesture. Lupa was extremely surprised by what was happening and could not understand why the Duke was doing this. Anastasia said angrily that this guy seemed to really think that he could just play with her. Filio, smiling, noted to himself that everything was going much more interestingly than he had expected, and the girl screamed as if putting an end to it. The assistant was shocked by the Duke's behavior and did not know how to react to it. The name Anastasia Boreati means lion's roar and was not chosen by chance. Count Canavrine is one of the few who can speak to the Duke directly and frankly, without embarrassment. These two men from the academy won hearts with their appearance and behavior. Filio Boreati resembled a high mountain hidden in blue icy peaks, and Count Reen seemed like a bright sunny meadow filled with light and warmth. In his rare hours of rest, the Count proudly talked about his child. Perhaps this image was simply imprinted in the Duke's memory and irritated him. That day, he saw many families walking and laughing, and they all seemed very happy in their simplicity. It probably did look good, even attractive. Anastasia was surprised to hear that this was precisely why he decided to adopt her. Filio noted with seriousness that this was precisely his main reason. But Anastasia countered that people don't usually do that. They take children because they can't have their own or because they're crazy about babies. Filio only noticed that she looked irritated, and Anastasia said that he was just stupid. He thought it was good that she was his only child, and there was something special about that. In the end, this is exactly what Anastasia wanted. She blocked his path in order to get what she wanted. Anastasia admitted that everything was exactly as he expected. Somehow, she managed to get out of this dreary and cold shelter. It was a truly dangerous step. She couldn't even imagine that she would get such a chance. After this, Anastasia said that she had one important request. She explained that it was necessary to report what was happening. At the shelter, the management and teachers were embezzling money that should have come from the fund. Duke Filio did indeed notice that this seemed to be the case. The Duke was surprised and asked again if she knew who a pimp was. Anastasia calmly replied that she knew. He sells people and sends them to the bar. Filio was stunned, and when he later told it, he didn't even know what to say. Anastasia admitted that they also want to sell one of the girls. That's why she wanted the Duke to punish these people to the fullest extent. He asked again whether she thought that all the culprits should be arrested. Anastasia clarified that she needed Connie's teacher because she always took care of the children. Anastasia, a brunette, with a broken finger, sat trying not to move so as not to touch the injury and cause the pain she had already begun to get used to. The girl noted to herself that she wondered how Filio had learned such details, since she had never told anyone anything. The Duke noted that only Anastasia showed concern for her maid, and this impressed him. The girl again reminded that the head of the orphanage regularly drank and often raised his hand against children. The bruise on her arm, according to Filio, was most likely left by this very person. However, Anastasia clarified that the bruise appeared at the hands of another teacher, not the head teacher. She added that the marks on her back were the result of punishment from the head teacher. This is why Anastasia asked the Duke to somehow punish everyone who participated in this. Filio asked with cold irony whether it would be fairer to cut off their heads. The girl objected that there was no need for execution, but it would be better to slowly torture them so that they could feel everything. Torment them until they beg for death to at least be freed from the pain. The Duke was shocked. It was beyond his comprehension how a 5-year-old girl could say such things. After this, Lupa approached His Highness and attracted his attention with a gesture. He reported that everything was already prepared for departure, and we could set out. However, Filio ordered that Lupa remain in the palace and not go anywhere. The area was dirty, and in the Duke's opinion, at least a superficial cleaning was needed. He demanded that Lupa clean everything until it shines, leaving not a speck of dust. Anastasia turned to him and wished him luck with the cleaning, smiling faintly. She added that if he was going to do this, it wouldn't hurt to give him a few tips on how to torture the guilty. True everyone except Connie. She was kind to the children, and the evidence of the thefts is in the safe behind the painting. The Duke noted with interest that Anastasia was a surprisingly energetic girl for her age. When they finally left, the girl said goodbye warmly and admitted that she would have been glad to stay, but she went anyway. The knights were sure that in front of them was the very golden daughter of the king, whom Lupa had hidden from everyone for a long time. Lupa just shrugged and reminded that they needed to finish cleaning first before discussing such guesses. The road was so long that by the time we arrived, night had already fallen, hiding the landscape in complete darkness. Anastasia wrapped herself in a blanket because it was piercingly cold outside, and she felt very cold. Filio Boreati heard her stomach rumble, but did not react to it in any way. He pretended not to hear it, although at the same time, it seemed as if someone was knocking on the window. He asked what was going on, and the woman apologized, adding that she needed to stop immediately. It was already quite late, and judging by the lady's appearance, she was not feeling well, so everyone decided that the Duke would like to spend the night at an inn nearby. Anastasia replied that she was fine, but the Duke said that they would stop anyway. He noted that she was literally shaking from hunger, but at the same time, she was able to express such loud indignation. These words touched Anastasia a little, and she was slightly offended. It would be really good for her to finally have some proper rest after everything. The Duke turned to Anna and noted that as soon as Anastasia recovered, they should prepare everything necessary for their next departure. The girl was genuinely surprised by what she heard. She did not expect such words. She even fell out of the carriage out of surprise. But Filio still managed to grab her hand in time. He acted so quickly that Anastasia didn't even have time to realize what had happened. She said she almost died at that moment, and added that the Duke had amazing reaction speed. The knight was very surprised, because the Duke had just dropped to his knee. The gentleman asked Lady Anna to take care exclusively of the girl. To begin with, they should have brought warm clothes and given some food. The knight replied that she would ask the innkeeper to prepare everything immediately. The little girl asked her who she was. The woman explained that she was the master's knight, but the lady could simply call her Anna. Hearing that Anna was a knight, the girl remarked that this was very cool. Then Anna thought that the girl was really very cute, but the knight was in complete shock when she saw that the girl had a daughter. She was supposed to help the baby wash herself, but she saw that she was badly beaten. Anna turned to the girl to ask something. She replied that her back was all bruised. The girl dreamed that these wounds would heal quickly. She explained that she wakes up if she lies on her back, because she was constantly beaten there, and the wounds do not have time to heal. Then the knight asked Lita to close the girl's eyes. Anna also said that there is no need to worry too much about bruises. At her age, wounds usually heal quickly if she rests and eats properly. Her younger brother also often got injured. That's why Anna gave him medicine that helps him recover faster. She promised to give this medicine to the girl after bathing. The little girl was surprised that Anna had a younger brother. Anna said that he really does get into trouble often and is therefore constantly injured. After some time, the girl changed her clothes and came to the gentleman to surprise him. She noted that the food smelled very good and had never smelled such a pleasant aroma. The gentleman noticed that Anastasia was still too ugly for his views. Anastasia got very angry and said that he didn't help her in any way. Filio replied that he had nothing to do with it, but now she was his daughter, and he was obliged to take care of her appearance. The girl said that he should just accept it because it would always be like this. The gentleman said that he never made concessions, and Anastasia explained that he should understand what it means to raise a child. He looked at her carefully, but she only turned away in response. After some time, Anastasia went to sleep in her room. Lupa said that they all lived in harsh conditions. According to the lady, they were beaten every day for a long time. Knight Anna was surprised that Anastasia looked too small for her age, and it looks like she wasn't being fed properly. The gentleman turned to Anna to say something important. He noted that anyone who dared to touch the children should be taken to the duchy. He will personally torture such people here. The girl was shocked when she put on such warm clothes for the first time. Anna noted that these clothes suit Anastasia very well. The girl was delighted with this compliment. Filio turned to her and remarked that she now looked like a normal person. Anastasia got angry and said that she had always been normal, and in such cases they usually give compliments. The gentleman did not understand why he should compliment someone who did not deserve them, and the girl replied that he should understand. He was her father. He asked why she still called him Mister, and she explained that she just wasn't used to calling him Dad yet. He responded by saying that he was not yet used to giving compliments. Then Anastasia became embarrassed and again realized that she was probably a little wrong in her thoughts. Filio added that if Anastasia wants praise, she needs to gain a little weight. Knight Anna said that Anastasia should check on the crew. When she came out, Anastasia asked if everything was ready for departure. She was informed that everything was ready, but she did not answer anything in response. The boys decided that something had happened, or that something had gone wrong. Anastasia admitted that she was simply used to communicating with ladies differently than with others. Filio and the others decided that she was probably exaggerating, not understanding why the Lord was acting unusually. And at that moment, a gentleman came out with a girl in his arms and asked what they were doing at the door. Everyone was very scared, realized that the morning was strange, and politely greeted the gentleman. Connie said that it would take some time to prepare the food. The gentleman said that they would then take a little walk. The boys didn't understand what exactly they had just seen. The girl was already sitting in the carriage and thinking about food. She asked what would happen if she threw up now. The gentleman replied that it was nothing to worry about because it was just vomit. Anastasia noticed that the carriage was very expensive. She thought that it would be very difficult to wash everything off later. But the gentleman still didn't understand why this bothered her so much. Filio noticed that Anastasia now seemed to have become a member of the Boreati family. Getting such a carriage turned out to be quite easy if you knew who to contact. By the time Anastasia places one order, they will have earned enough to buy another carriage just like it. So she should have just told Filio what she wanted, and he would give it to her right away. She then noted that Mr. Boreati was indeed a very influential person. Anastasia was very happy and admitted that money really does decide a lot in life. But at the same time, she honestly admitted that she doesn't want to feel sick, because it's very unpleasant. She also noted that people need to have not only money, but also a rich heart. Filio said that it was all nonsense, and the girl agreed with him, but added, "That nonsense is what poor people tell themselves to keep up their spirits." She also asked if Filio knew how this world really worked. The Duke thought for a moment, wondering what he should buy now. He also noted that Anastasia is a very smart girl. The girl was happy when she saw her knight Anna. She told Filio that she really liked the way Anna took care of her. The Duke replied that Anna was an excellent knight and protector. Now thinking about it, he realized that Anastasia really needed a knight who could protect her. She will have to learn to be under the care of a personal protector and a senior maid. She will also need the best escort. That is personal attendance. Filio asked if Anastasia had ever tried to pass through the magical gates. Anastasia was very surprised to hear this, and at that moment they stopped to rest and refresh themselves a little. Anna asked if everything was okay with her lady. The Duke noted that the girl had a very weak spot. This happened when they were close to the abomination. Anastasia asked the Duke what the gate was. He explained that it was a device that allowed one to travel long distances. This happens rarely, and when someone goes through it for the first time, they start to feel nauseous. The gates resemble a tunnel. The girl said that she hadn't tried it before. She thought everything would be fine. The Duke remarked that he had never heard of anyone dying from ordinary motion sickness. He added that he would now do something to make her feel better. He took Anastasia in his arms and wrapped her in his clothes. She actually felt a little warmer. She asked to stop because she started feeling sick to her back again. The Duke noted that she talked too much. Anastasia said that she might vomit, but only on his clothes. The Duke thought that she was simply mocking him with such words. He added that she was still ugly. The Knightly Order of Glacidigo protects everyone and has served Duke Boreati for many years. A man who perfectly fits the nickname Black Beast. But now the Duke looks very cute when he holds the child in his arms. This is an unusual picture for all knights. For them, this scene is both beautiful and terrible. Anastasia said that it was worth preparing to leave as soon as the ladies recovered. After some time they arrived. and the girl was in complete shock. For her, it was the first encounter with such beauty around. Filio noticed that this city was significantly smaller than the capital, but Anastasia replied that she had never been to the capital, so she couldn't know this. Now she understood why this place seemed the best for her. The girl later said that there was a lot of snow here. Filio explained that the Boreati family has snow on the ground until almost spring. Anastasia, as a blogger, was surprised that it was so cold here. Filio noted that this was normal and that she would soon get used to it. Then the girl admitted that she actually liked the cold. Everyone was bustling about because the Duke's arrival was approaching and they had to have time to prepare. At that moment, they noticed that the carriage was already entering the territory. The headmaid greeted Filio, who had just arrived. She was here a week ago when she saw Anastasia with him for the first time. The girl was shocked to see how huge the house was. Then Filio picked her up in his arms, and she didn't understand what was happening. He walked on calmly, looking serious and not paying attention. Everyone congratulated Filio on his return. Anastasia felt uncomfortable in his arms and began to kick a little. The girl didn't understand why everyone was looking at her so strangely. Then she told her father that she no longer felt nauseous. Filio replied that he knew about it, and she noticed that she was hungry. Filio asked her to wait a little, and then Anastasia turned to him. He asked what she wanted to say, and she suddenly noted that he had a very muscular chest. He was completely unprepared for this and didn't know how to react to it. After a while, they found themselves inside, where they were also met by maids. Anastasia was amazed. She had never seen anything like this in her life before. Horror stories that were usually told about such places immediately popped into her head. The girl was sure that there was a murderer hiding among them, and then Filio asked how she knew this. Anastasia was very scared when she heard this, because she could not believe that someone had died here, and that a murderer was hiding among them. Filio noticed that the mansion even had a prison, and asked if Anastasia wanted to take a look at it. The girl replied that she was afraid of such places, and then the head lackey thought that Filio was probably tired. Filio noted that Anastasia takes very good care of the mansion, introduced her as Kara, and asked her to find several designers and craftsmen to invite here. Kara apologized and said that perhaps her question was inappropriate, but she needed to know why these specialists were invited. Anastasia did not tell that there was no room in the house suitable for her. Kara had absolutely no idea who this child was or why he was here. The girl politely introduced herself as Anastasia, but Filio said that this was not true. He noticed that the name he had given her was much longer than she pronounced, and it was as if she had already begun to forget it. This caused him slight bewilderment and a desire to clarify. He wondered if she could tell him her full name, and whether she should do so at this moment, considering that she had introduced herself so briefly and simply. He quietly asked if she really intended to always introduce herself so briefly, without her full name, as she did now, as if it were a habit with her. The girl replied that her name was Anastasia Boreati, and said this with a slight hesitation, as if she was afraid that it might seem too long. After that, he patted her on the head, expressing with such a gesture approval and praise for the fact that she gave her full name. She did not expect such attention at all, was a little embarrassed, and lowered her eyes, feeling awkward from the unexpected praise. Everyone around was a little shocked. No one expected that at that moment it would suddenly start raining, which only added to the unexpectedness of what was happening. In addition, those present were surprised at how cute they looked together, despite the strangeness of the situation and the unexpected rain. It was a really touching and sweet scene, but none of them could fully believe and accept what was actually happening in front of them. The head footman announced that he would go and prepare food, hinting that many surprises and events were expected here in the near future. The Duke brought the child home as if he were taking responsibility for her, as if it were an important step for both of them. He continued to carry the girl in his arms all the way to the threshold, trying to carefully support her and not let her go for a second. The most important thing that everyone discussed was that the girl had black hair, which caused a lot of questions and bewilderment among those around her. They could not believe that the Duke could really have a mistress. It seemed incredible and completely impossible to them. It was impossible to imagine that he could have a mistress, although with his face and image it seemed quite possible, and everyone doubted it. But at the same time, he seemed so gloomy and closed that no one could believe that he could really have someone other than them. The lady didn't look scared at all next to him. On the contrary, There was a slight smile on her face that spoke of calm and inner confidence, as if she felt safe next to him. She looked very cheerful and joyful. Her mood seemed sincere, as if what was happening around her was a real holiday for her, and she enjoyed every minute, not noticing any worries. There was a lightness and carelessness in her gaze, as if she was imagining something very pleasant and funny. It was as if she was completely immersed in her thoughts, which brought her joy and inspiration. Many would say that she was very sweet and charming, and her behavior only confirmed this impression. There was something touching and sincere about her that was impossible not to notice. Suddenly, the main OK, the person responsible for order and organization in this house, came up to Coney. Her appearance was important and not accidental. She always kept the situation under control. She said that someone had to accompany the lady to ensure her safety and comfort while away from home. This was an important requirement related to her care. The maid said that she herself could accompany the lady, but only on condition that she would be given more attention and support. This was explained by her condition and past experience. Before this, the maid had suffered a lot, and this experience left a deep mark on her life. Therefore now she needed special treatment and attention from those around her. Because of this, they asked that special attention be given to her so that those difficult moments would not be repeated, and so that she could fully perform her duties without risk to herself. The maid thought about the little girl in the house and how much she really needed care and support. Her thoughts were full of doubts and worries. The girl looked too skinny and fragile, as if she was vulnerable and needed protection. This made the maid want to protect her and not allow any troubles to happen. Her eyes were very sweet and expressive, which is typical of all children. They showed innocence and trust, which made adults treat her with special warmth. In any case, the Duke had indeed changed. His attitude towards those around him had become softer and more considerate, which was noticed by everyone who was around him. Meanwhile, the Duke sat in his room and worked completely immersed in the affairs and concerns that required his attention and concentration. The chief footman, the knight, and another knight came to see him, men he trusted, and who were part of his entourage, maintaining order and discipline. OK expressed her dissatisfaction with the fact that the gentleman had adopted the girl for what she considered to be a very ill-considered reason, and she could not understand what he was thinking when he made such a decision. The footman said it was too irresponsible because he had not thought at all about the girl's prospects and what awaited her in the future. During these conversations, the Duke did not listen to them, but simply looked out the window as if he was immersed in his thoughts and experiences, not distracted by comments. He saw a girl playing with snow outside, and it gave him a pleasant feeling, a slight smile, and a warm feeling inside. She looked very cute, cheerful and carefree, enjoying the moment, and unaware of the problems that awaited her ahead. The Duke simply smiled and did not pay attention to the footman, because at that moment it was important for him to watch the girl and experience this simple joy. The footman said that the child was not a toy or a pet, and she expected a more serious attitude towards the girl and her fate. She noted that the gentleman's behavior looked as if the girl was his cat, with whom he could play a little and then forget, and not a full-fledged person who required care. The gentleman asked if she thought he did not understand this, showing that he was aware of the full responsibility, but was acting in his own way, guided by personal motives. The footman noted that in any case he should not have adopted the child so quickly and without thinking, especially without preparation and discussion with others. The decision seemed too spontaneous. From the gentleman's look, the footman understood that it was better not to continue the conversation and not to ask more questions, otherwise she risked causing displeasure. In his eyes, fatigue and determination were visible. One of the knights advised the footman to calm down and not interfere, and he himself asked whether this child was really the master's daughter, wanting to clarify the situation without unnecessary gossip. The gentleman asked not to make him repeat his explanations, making it clear that the topic was already closed and any doubts were unnecessary. He was not going to return to this conversation again. The girl simply had black hair, a characteristic feature of the Boreati family, and this was the only thing that distinguished her from others, emphasizing her belonging to the family. Black hair was a special family trait that distinguished the Boreati from other families, and was a kind of symbol and pride for them. A child unexpectedly accepted into a family, and even with such a sign, could become the subject of conversations and gossip among the townspeople, and nobility, arousing curiosity and doubts. Rumors had already begun to circulate that the girl might be the Duke's illegitimate daughter, which only increased public interest and raised new questions. The gentleman explained that, first of all, they needed to help the child get a little better, because her health condition was causing some concern and required attention. He also asked to stop asking him unnecessary questions, especially those concerning her fate, because this only interferes and distracts from the main thing. The footman dared to ask what exactly he intended to do next, trying to understand how the Duke planned to deal with the consequences of this decision. The gentleman asked what she meant and explained that he was going to raise the girl as his own, giving her maximum attention and care. The footman was glad that the Duke was caring and taking his new duty seriously because it gave hope for a bright future for the child. She said that the main thing now was to silence anyone who would start spreading rumors and suspecting the Duke of impulsiveness and rash actions. She recently invited several merchants to buy the girl the necessary things that would help her adapt faster and look decent. Because of these purchases, rumors began to spread quickly throughout the city, attracting more and more attention and discussion to the girl and the Duke. Therefore, the footman wants to know from the Duke how he intends to combat such rumors and protect his new daughter from unnecessary gossip. The Duke understands that this is only the beginning and that ahead lies a difficult struggle for the child's peace and maintaining the family's reputation in society. The gentleman was silent at first, not giving any answer, as if he was thinking over what he had heard. His calm seemed tense, and no one dared to break the silence. Then, looking at the girl, he smiled. A slight smile, but there was kindness and warmth in it, which immediately relieved the tension in the room and surprised everyone a little. He noted that she was already running around the house, as if it were her personal property, which spoke of her freedom and confidence in this place, as if it had become her home. Everyone around was surprised by such an unexpected reaction of the Duke. Usually he was reserved and serious, but now his words sounded almost kind, which confused those present. Then he advised, first of all, to simply do nothing, not to rush into conclusions and actions, which was unexpected advice in such a situations. People were shocked, not understanding why the Duke was giving this advice. They expected strict instructions and clear orders, not a call for inaction. The Duke looked menacingly at the knight, and she immediately fell silent, realizing that it was better not to argue or express doubts about his decision. The knight expressed concern that the girl would be insulted and mocked behind her back, which could turn her life into a real nightmare. For her, this would be a real hell. The constant attention and sidelong glances of those around her would not leave her a moment of peace, making her feel like an outcast. The gentleman said that, of course, no one she feared would dare to show compassion, but if anyone decided to hurt her, he would have to pay for it. He promised that if he noticed such a situation, he would personally take upon himself the honor of destroying the offenders with his blade washed in blood. The threat was extremely clear and serious. The knight bowed, realizing that her master's attitude was unyielding and serious, and that he was truly ready to protect her by any means necessary. At that moment, a servant knocked on his door and informed him that the master was waiting in the vestibule, which meant that he had to leave the room immediately. The gentleman heard the news that their dear guests had arrived, and this aroused in him a certain attention and readiness to meet. The maids promised to help, although they said it as if everything was under control, and there was no need to worry about possible problems. One of the maids came closer, expressing the hope that the lady was enjoying herself, and invited her to come closer, showing concern and attention to her condition. Anastasia noticed that the snow reached her ankles, which created a feeling of cold and damp environment, making being outside unpleasant. She felt as if snow was creeping under her clothes every time she took off her hat, making her shiver with cold and discomfort. The maid said that she was indeed right, and perhaps she should ask the cleaners to clear the snow for her. But the girl replied that she loved snow and did not want it cleared. She decided to make a big snowman the next time she went out. The thought seemed so joyful to her that she looked forward to her walk. The cook also looked in on her and said that if she had had fun, then now it was time to have a snack, because a cheerful mood requires good food. The girl was absolutely delighted when she saw what they had prepared for her. Everything looked so appetizing and beautiful that she wanted to try it right away. The chef explained that it was not difficult to prepare, and now she can calmly enjoy the food without worrying about how everything was done. When she tried it, she was simply delighted. The taste was so pleasant that the girl could not even believe that it was a real delicacy. She was told not to be shy and to ask for more if she wanted. The girl felt free and happy with such attention. The girl's delight did not subside. She enjoyed every piece and was sincerely glad that so much care and attention was given to her. After that, the one the girl simply called the car came to her, and this made her smile. She was glad to see hers. The appearance of the car on Anastasia's face was immediately reflected by a bright smile, which made her even happier and more alive. Anastasia hurried to Anna to hug the knight tightly, who was always there, and supported her in difficult moments. Anna noted that Anastasia had a great time during the walk, and that this was evident from her mood and joyful look. The knight noted that the girl should address her less formally, since there should be a friendly closeness between them. But the girl replied that she had become so accustomed to speaking formally and respectfully, and it was difficult for her to change this style of communication. Anna, however, believed that such strict treatment was not very appropriate for a lady from the Duke's family, and that it created unnecessary tension. She added that one can and should communicate more simply with one of her knights, without using excessive formality and distance. The girl thought that becoming a knight was only possible through very hard work and constant efforts, because it requires not only strength, but also complete dedication to the cause. Anna smiled and noticed that the Duke was now looking for that very edge, that point that could change everything and reveal the girl's hidden potential. The girl was surprised, because she expected that the Duke would again ask her to simply look good. But here there was a completely different approach, much more serious. Anna explained that the Duke thought that the girl herself would like this task, and that it would help her to reveal herself and become stronger. After some time, they came to the Duke, and there stood some horse with a bow, which seemed strange and incomprehensible to the girl. The girl was in complete shock when she entered. She did not understand what kind of strange situation this was, and why there was a horse with such decoration. Everyone was really surprised because this horse looked very much like one of his relatives, like a reflection of the Duke himself. And he spoke almost exactly like the Duke, with similar intonations and mannerisms, which made it even more confusing. No one could understand how it happened that an animal and a person could be so similar to each other. The girl said that this gift was too expensive, and she did not know how to accept it, feeling awkward. But the Duke insisted that she should thank him, because even such a gift was a sign of his respect and trust in her. She tried to figure out what exactly he would say when he tried to take the gift back, but the Duke didn't want to back down. She was told to act nice at least once a day, as this would help improve relationships and show inner strength. The girl asked what would happen if she refused to comply with this simple requirement, fearing the consequences. Then the Duke noted that the refusal was his fault, that he had raised her poorly, but he was not going to drive her away because of this. On the contrary, he would be patient. She thought he was some kind of pervert and didn't understand why he was acting so strangely. Her thoughts were full of doubts and mistrust towards him despite everything that was happening. He, without hiding his interest, asked when she would start calling him father. She replied that she would try to do so, although it was difficult for her to imagine such a step. Despite her inner resistance, she generally agreed with this and understood that it could bring them closer together, even if it was not easy for her. He asked her for her hand at the same time, presenting her with a piece of candy as a symbol of his appeal and promise, which seemed to mean a lot to him. He explained that it was a small reward, a sign of gratitude and encouragement for her actions, albeit simple but important in their relationship. This award was meant to remind her of every time she had been good and sweet, trying to do everything to earn his favor. For everyone around the Duke with strawberry milk candies was an unusual sight, because they were accustomed to his seriousness and strict appearance. Anastasia asked why Mr. still called her by another name, since it sounded strange given their new relationship. She looked down, not knowing how to explain her feelings and thoughts, and it was difficult for her to find the words to tell everything honestly. Anastasia thought he was angry, but in fact he just said that he had received good news, which calmed her down a little. This news concerned people who had once hurt her deeply, and now she felt the past beginning to return. He asked to bring her to show her everything, although she was still a little nervous and unsure how much she could handle this moment. She was afraid that meeting them could hurt her again and make her relive the terrible memories that she had long wanted to get rid of. If things became too difficult for her, she would immediately ask to be taken to her room to escape the unpleasant emotions and find peace. She also promised to definitely talk to his lordship about everything that happened and to tell him everything that was on her mind instead of remaining silent. At the same time, the girl wanted to see everything with her own eyes, understand the situation, and figure it out, so as not to remain in ignorance and fear. The Duke stood before them, looking intently at the piece of paper in her hands, trying to understand the essence of what was written. Her gaze was focused and slightly anxious, as if she was looking for answers to an important question. He asked what had happened to the orphanage, showing genuine interest and concern for the fate of those who lived there. The question was asked with the hope of learning at least some good news. He was told that the orphanage had burned down in an accident, leaving behind only ashes and destruction. The news was heavy, as if there was sadness and hopelessness in the air. Lupa noted that the authorities were notified of the incident, and unfortunately, all the children and caregivers there died. This caused a bitter sense of loss that was difficult to drown out with words. However, the most affected by this tragedy were the children and their teacher, who essentially had to leave this world, but now remain forever in the memory of those who knew them. If they had managed to survive, they could have provided support and assistance to those who really needed it, continuing to live and fight for the future. The Duke understood the full extent of what had happened, and said that help could have come if they had arrived a little earlier. Then perhaps the tragedy could have been avoided. After that, he did not hesitate to burn the papers, as if trying to erase the memories of this bitter event, and let go of the past, leaving it behind. The men kneeling before him looked frightened and humble, as if they realized the gravity of their guilt or responsibility for what had happened. Suddenly, he heard Anastasia's voice, which pierced the silence and awakened old feelings in him. A voice full of hope and strength, capable of inspiring even in the darkest hour. Boreati always did the right thing. His authority was so strong that even the imperial family could not argue with him or oppose his decisions. There were many reasons for this, but one of the main ones was that the aura could only be obtained by those who had reached a certain level of mastery of the ball. It was a unique feature. Mages used their power differently. They controlled mana, which served as the source of their magical abilities, and was different from aura. These were completely different phenomena, but both forces were important and influenced the course of events, helping to achieve goals and maintain balance. It was this ability that distinguished Boreati and made him unique, giving him special power and influence in society and among his loved ones. The girl was very happy when she saw the mister. Her eyes were shining with joy, and the smile did not leave her face, as if she found support and protection in him. She almost jumped out of the knight's arms. She was so excited and happy that her heart was filled with light and hope for a better future. When the girl landed, she immediately ran to her father, hurrying to him with such joy and impatience that it seemed as if she could not linger any longer. Her whole world at that moment was focused on him. Her father warned her that if she ran so fast, she would definitely get hurt trying to protect her from possible injuries, and remind her that haste often leads to pain. But the girl did not understand such warnings, because in the orphanage she ran better than anyone else, was fast and agile, and never encountered problems that could stop her. She had heard people say that she would understand everything when she broke her nose, but it seemed too serious and incomprehensible to her. Why be so afraid and limit herself for no reason? Her father noticed that he was interested in how many times she had to run away from the orphanage, as if it had become a normal part of her life, and he was willing to listen to her story to understand what she had to face. The girl confirmed that it was true that she often ran away and explained the reasons, as if carrying the burden of those difficult days and memories that did not let her go. All this happened because of those people who constantly tried to hit her, did not give her peace, and her life in the shelter was full of threats and struggle for her place in the sun. Later, she turned to Mr. Secretary, who responded with a smile soft and warm, as a sign of goodwill and understanding, which immediately lifted her spirits and gave her a feeling of security. He introduced himself and said that he was very glad to see her again, showing genuine joy and warmth, as if their meetings brought him real satisfaction and comfort. He also expressed his pleasure that the lady was doing well, that she was healthy and feeling well, showing his care and attention to her condition. The girl said that she eats a lot and sleeps well, that there is order and peace in her life now, which has become her personal victory and a reason for pride. The man was genuinely happy to hear these words, because for him, it meant that everything was going in the right direction, and the girl was really under good protection. At that moment, the girl heard those around her, those very connected people, begin to talk about how they missed her. Their voices were filled with warmth and anticipation of her return. They admitted that they loved her very much, that she was dear to them, and each of them wished her only happiness, supporting her invisible connection with the past and the present. Then the head of the shelter turned to her, reminding her that he was her abbot, and his words were filled with respect and care, as if assuring her of his role as protector. He said that when she first came to the shelter, he saw her as small and vulnerable, like a child who was just beginning to explore the world around her, full of new and unknown things. It was a hot summer, and the girl was as tiny as a mouse, still not very strong, but already full of life, and the desire to survive, which made her stand out from the rest. The girl turned to her father, and he said that all these guests came to see her to show that she was expected and appreciated, and that her life had special meaning for many. He had to live his whole life to atone for the mistakes and punishments he had brought upon himself and others. That was his purpose, to live to fix what he had destroyed. Like her father, he is obliged to entertain those who rule over him, to fulfill their whims and desires, in order to maintain peace in their environment and not cause unnecessary problems. She should have talked to these people until he helped her calm down. This was the only way to avoid conflicts and establish at least some kind of mutual understanding. The girl did not understand at all why she had to do this. It seemed meaningless and alien, and her internal protest left no doubt. He explained that he wanted to see if she would be willing to show mercy to one of them, but even with that explanation, she was confused and did not understand the reasons for such a choice. She couldn't accept them and thought they were all crazy bastards who were talking complete nonsense and didn't deserve any compassion or attention. Therefore, she wished them only painful and terrible torture, so that they would experience at least some of the pain that they caused to others. This was the same teacher who beat her hands every day and made her endure pain, not giving her a moment of peace. This city was famous for punishing children with leather belts without the slightest regret, and no one interfered with this cruelty. The teacher, who was supposed to take care of the children, secretly used the foundation's money for personal affairs, and her own gain, betraying the trust. They all should have been good and honest people, but instead they chose cruelty and betrayal, leaving children without protection. They had many common memories with the abbot that connected them in the past, but now it did not help to get rid of the difficult circumstances. The girl noted that adults like him and the teachers were supposed to protect children, not become a source of pain and fear, which made the situation even more tragic. She finally decided to ask why none of them had seen what they were talking about. Her question seemed simple, but it contained a deep need to understand what was happening around her. Probing further, she asked why he had beaten them all. What had been the reason for this violence? She tried to find some sense in such an act, in what seemed cruel and senseless. The Duke watched what was happening with a different look. There was neither surprise nor indignation in his eyes, only a calm and cold understanding, as if he saw everything from a different angle, inaccessible to others. The girl mentioned that she came to the shelter in the fall, not the summer, emphasizing that she herself remembers details that others might not notice or forget. It was a small but important fact that she wanted to convey. She didn't expect him to remember even such a small thing, because it seemed insignificant, but nevertheless, it was important to her, at least something that proved his attention or memory. Then she took out something, and the gentleman became interested in what this object was. His gaze became more focused. He carefully studied what the girl showed, trying to understand the meaning. The girl explained that it was a gift for them, for the guests. She wanted to do something special that could express her feelings or show respect or care. She opened the box and said that inside was a requiem. It was a musical gift that had deep symbolism connected with memory and farewell. The requiem is played to accompany the souls of the dead, and the girl knew this, putting into her gift not only music, but also the meaning associated with departure and farewell. Lupa could not believe that they were really related. There was so little in common between them, and this connection seemed strained and strange to him, as if the relationship was just a formality. The footman only asked Lupa to be quieter, not to attract unnecessary attention, as if trying to hide their family problems from prying eyes and maintain the appearance of order. The girl's black hair and her character were very reminiscent of her mistress, but there were also differences. The dark features were mixed with something else unique to her, which distinguished her from the others. The girl said that now they would not go anywhere, as if fate had bound them together forever, despite all the difficulties and contradictions that arose between them. They all seemed disgusting to her, as if doomed to rot in water or languish in some kind of endless decay, which gave the situation a gloomy and hopeless tone. After all this, the gentleman gave her a candy, as if he wanted to soften the tension of the moment, or show a little affection despite the gravity of the conversation. She said she had done nothing wrong, although he believed otherwise, and tension arose between them because of their different views on her actions and responsibility. The girl assumed he was referring to her humiliation of other people and gossip, which seemed like an unfair accusation to her, but perhaps there was some truth in it. The gentleman said she had acted as a Boreati should alluding to strict family standards and traditions that she may have broken or observed in her own way. She was pleased to hear such words from her father, despite all the difficulties of their relationship, because it meant recognition and a certain support in his eyes. The maids were amazed. Their lady looked so magnificent that it seemed almost magical. Each of them could not take their eyes off, amazed by her beauty and grace. The footman and the knight, Anna, were also completely delighted with what was happening. They did not expect that everything would turn out exactly like this, and their surprise was visible in every look and gesture. Lupa was the only one who was not affected by all this. He even thought that the others were acting strangely and were worrying too much about trifles, not understanding their delight. The girl realized that her father would not allow them to die quickly because he was too wise and cautious to allow such extravagance in relation to his family. The father explained that he would not do anything so reckless or wasteful. He valued every opportunity and every resource he had. The girl smiled and agreed that it was right to use everything that was available, and was surprised where she got such thoughts from. Her father could not understand where she learned this. She replied that she had been taught all this in the orphanage, where life was harsh, and she had to quickly learn to find a way out of different situations. The girl came up with the idea of tying them together and throwing them off a cliff to test their strength and endurance, as this could be a test for everyone. She explained that when they came back, due to the tension in the rope, they would go down again, then up, and repeat this several times to test its strength. This way they can leave them hanging until the rope breaks, which will help them understand how much they can be relied on and who is capable of what. The gentleman agreed that the idea was good and that there was a suitable rock nearby, where all this could be arranged without unnecessary problems and fuss. The girl warned them not to be too rough with them because they would have to endure many more trials and it would not always be easy to maintain composure. She even threatened to slap anyone if they failed to keep their promise and let the others down, because team discipline was important. Lupa was completely shocked by such determination and realized that in any case, he would have to participate in this and fulfill his duties to the end. He paused for a moment, wondering if he was beginning to understand something important. It was as if his thoughts were coming together in a puzzle, revealing a hidden truth that had long remained a mystery to him. But Regina no longer had any connection to the Duke's family. Her fate was separated from her family, and the connection that once could have been was now irretrievably lost. Regina was strikingly similar to her mistress, not only in appearance, but also in her manners and behavior, as if she reflected the very one who was an example and symbol for the family. It would have been easier if she had turned out to be the Duke's illegitimate child. Then her existence would have had at least some logic and explanation within the framework of family ties. On the day of their first meeting, although she looked like a lost street child, there was something noble about her, like a hidden depth that beckoned and commanded respect. At that time, she was not yet acquainted with Madame Regina, and fate did not bring them face to face, although in the future their lives were to become closely intertwined. Now she looked very much like a child of the Duke's family, who was carefully raised and valued in the same way as that very Regina, who was an important figure for the family and a part of their world. But at the same time, they were not at all similar to each other, despite their external similarities. In their souls and destinies, there were great differences and opposites. Now, all this was in the past. Those who connected her with her family were no longer alive. They were gone forever, leaving behind only memories and shadows. One day, in the pouring rain, on the territory of the Duke's family estate, she ran hiding from everything that once connected her to this place. She ran away and looked scared, then like a child who had to leave her home to survive in this cruel world full of threats and dangers. She left with the one she loved, leaving everything behind, the past, her fears, and the life that now seemed alien and unnecessary to her. Lupa personally examined the carriage that was carried downstream by the river that day, trying to understand what happened and where the fugitives could have disappeared to. But the bodies were never found, as if they had dissolved in the water, leaving behind only a mystery that no one has been able to solve to this day. If they managed to survive, then perhaps they could even find a new home, a new life, where no one would know their past and who they really are. And if they did escape from the Duke's territory, then it was probably from there that this child was born, a living reminder of the past that no one wanted to remember. In the evening, the Duke decided to take a bath, trying to cleanse himself, not only physically, but also mentally, trying to forget all the disturbing thoughts and find peace within himself. She remembered being told that this child was not just a pet, but someone special, something more than an ordinary animal, and those words touched her soul. He thought about her words, deciding to consider them carefully, because the meaning in them was deeper than it seemed at first glance. Later, after he had already left the bath, he thought that a pet is just an animal, and no matter how you look at it, this definition is too narrow. For some creatures, this comparison was offensive, because they would like to be recognized as something different, and not just animals. He wondered how she knew the word requiem. It seemed too complicated for a child her age. Requiem, embezzlement. These concepts were complex, but she knew them, and it was surprising. Although she was still very young, she had a command of words that even older children could not master. She was taken to an orphanage at the age of 5, and given that her knowledge seemed even more amazing and unusual. Maybe she was a genius, that was the thought that occurred to him when Lupa knocked unexpectedly on his door. He was surprised, and noted that he had not called him, not expecting a guest at that moment. Lupa said he had something to tell him, and it seemed important despite the unexpected visit. He sat and behaved strangely, and the gentleman became interested in what kind of strange appearance he had taken on. The assistant explained that it was all because of the work he had done for the gentleman, and that explained his condition. The work was difficult and stressful, and it took its toll on Lupa, who looked tired and agitated. He was sorry that he had come without an invitation, but the gentleman had not invited him anyway, and this added to the awkwardness of the situation. First of all, Lupa believed that what he wanted to tell was very important and could not wait. At that moment, a girl knocked and asked if Mr. was there, and her persistence was noticeable. Apparently, his lordship was still in pain, and the maid saw how a bath was being prepared for him, so perhaps they should return later. But the girl was determined and wanted to see the gentleman right now, no matter what. The gentleman and his assistant heard her quiet voice behind the doors, where she was quietly saying something. Their attention was drawn to the unusual softness of her intonations, and they stopped to listen carefully to what was happening inside. The maid explained that His Grace, the Duke, was the strongest man she had ever known. She was surprised that so many were afraid of him, although she herself was only a simple maid, and such feelings were foreign to her. The girl could not understand why the master treated her so well. The maid explained that it was because his lordship truly cared and worried about her, and it was felt in everything he did. If this was really so, then it was very pleasant for the girl to hear something like this, because no one had ever told her before that she could be cared for truly and sincerely. After these words, the gentleman smiled, hiding his true feelings, and at that moment, a slight warmth appeared in the room, which was noticeable to everyone present. The girl thought about it and asked, what if the mister remained an old bachelor because he cared about her? Maybe he should reconsider his views on life. The maid noticed that his lordship was very popular and could not rely only on appearance. He absolutely had to be kind, although he had a completely disgusting character, and everyone knew it. Lupa and the gentleman heard all this, and Lupa was even confused, not knowing how to react to such words. He found it funny, but he could not understand what to do with this situation. Despite all the seriousness, the gentleman found it funny to hear people talking about him, because he himself sometimes wanted to laugh at his image and character. The girl decided that perhaps she should feed him, since he had the character of a spoiled child, and maybe then he would become a little softer and kinder in her eyes. Then the Duke finally decided to open the front doors to go out and see how he could change the situation and perhaps start something new in his relationship with the girl. The maid was very scared when she realized that he was really there. The girl remained calm and did not even blink, as if nothing unusual was happening in the room. The maid asked why he did not answer when she called him, trying to understand what was happening and why he had been silent for so long. At the same time, she noticed how Lupa looked away in embarrassment, trying not to catch the maid's eye and avoid unnecessary questions. There was also a gentleman in the room who was naked, which surprised the maid even more and caused her confusion. Mr. Shirtless and Mr. Lupa were sitting on the sofa, and it was this scene that made the maid completely confused and forget what she wanted to say. Then the maid began to insist that the lady had misunderstood everything, trying to explain the situation and soften the impression of what she had seen. The gentleman responded by asking her to enter the room, and also noted that she had misunderstood everything and should not jump to conclusions. The Lord wondered if he could really look like the person they were talking about, trying to figure out his own image in the eyes of others. The girl stated that loving men is not a sin, but the gentleman nevertheless emphasized that this opinion is not always shared by others. He asked Lena if she thought he would become unpopular just because he had a child, trying to understand her attitude towards this situation. The girl was slightly embarrassed when she saw his figure, which revealed her inner excitement and confusion from the unexpected meeting. She looked away, looking pretty cool, but underneath it all, she was shy and embarrassed. The girl noted that he deserved to meet a good man, but the gentleman replied that he did not need it now and was not ready for a new relationship. God didn't understand why he was starting to justify himself to her, and suddenly decided to just pick her up in his arms to show his determination and protection. When the girl touched him, she was simply delighted with this touch, which caused strong emotions in her. It was an unusual feeling for her, filled with joy and surprise, which she will remember for a long time. He couldn't understand why she had such an unexpected reaction. Everything happened suddenly, and he couldn't grasp the reason for her strange behavior. It confused him because he expected something completely different. In the end, he decided not to stay like that, and to get dressed anyway, so as not to create even more misunderstandings. He understood that without clothes, the situation would only get more complicated, and he wanted to somehow put his thoughts in order. She asked him why he did this, and he looked at her with bewilderment, not understanding why she was asking about this. It was incomprehensible to him, and seemed strange because he thought that everything was explainable. The girl admitted that just looking at him made her head spin. She couldn't concentrate, and this feeling took over her, completely depriving her of clarity and peace. The gentleman said that he was already tired, and at the same time complained that his own daughter was harassing him, which only added to the tension and fatigue in his soul. Despite this, he still decided to ask why she came to him in the first place. This question was important to understand her intentions and move the situation forward. The girl thought for a moment, saying that she had almost forgotten the reason for her visit. Her memory was failing her, and it was as if she herself could not explain why she was here. Then, she told him that she came to give him cookies, knowing that he had worked hard in the dungeon and needed a little rest. It was a small sign of concern on her part. The chef helped her make cookies, and she was sure he wouldn't be able to resist such a treat. Her goal was to make him relax a little and gain strength. When they first met, he had kept the candies for a long time, and now she decided to thank him for this attention. However, he noticed that all the ingredients for the cookies were bought with his money, which did not go unnoticed. The girl was indignant, saying that she couldn't stand it when he did that. If he didn't want the cookies, he should just give them to her and not make a big deal out of it. He asked who said he wouldn't eat the cookies, and that made her angry. Now she didn't want to give him the treat, being annoyed. She added that if she didn't have the money, he would be sad. The father replied that now his money was her money, and the girl immediately admitted that she was just joking, trying to defuse the situation and not create a conflict. Lupa didn't even know how to watch these two without interfering and understand what was going on between them. He was confused and couldn't find a suitable way to watch them, feeling like he was out of place. He couldn't figure out if they had truly forgotten about his presence or if they were simply ignoring him. Lupa felt invisible, as if he didn't exist at all to them, and this added to his insecurity. After some time, the girl and the maid went up to their room. There they quickly went about their business, leaving Lupa in the hall where he continued to observe the situation. The gentleman sat down on the sofa and looked towards Lupa. His face expressed slight surprise, because he did not expect to see Lupa still here after everything that had already happened. He asked what Lupa wanted this time. There was irony in his voice, as if the gentleman doubted that something important would come, but still showed interest. Lupa tried to answer, but then the gentleman reminded him that he had not yet told anything. He demanded that he speak faster, without losing patience and waiting for the essence. Lupa was confused and did not understand why he had come. It seemed to him that he had come without a clear purpose, but deep down, he decided to try to explain. He decided to say that he had come about Lady Anastasia, trying to find the right words and explain what exactly was bothering him. The girl had obviously tried hard, and the gentleman seemed to like the cookies she had made. This was evident from his expression, slightly relaxed and approving. The maid reminded that she herself had taken part in preparing the treat, helping the girl, and this should have been important. She noted that the gentleman was very busy today, and so they both tried hard to please him and do something nice. The maid added that it was time for them to go to bed now, and if they needed anything, they should ring the bell to get help right away. The magic bells were special. As soon as one of the maids rang them, all the others could hear the ringing. This method of communication was convenient and unnoticeable, almost like a secret language between the servants. The maid showed a magic bracelet that she wore on her hand. Through this bracelet, she could hear the ringing of a bell, even if she was far away, which made it easier to communicate and control what was happening in the castle. This device seemed very useful and modern, although it cost a lot of money. Such magical things were not available to everyone, and their use was considered a luxury and a sign of high status. Anastasia felt annoyed, remembering how children in childhood played music with similar bells. For her, this sound caused a strange feeling of nostalgia mixed with slight resentment. The music they played then was somehow Christmas-like, filled with warmth and joy. But in Anastasia's memory, it sounded like an echo of the distant past, lost in the labyrinths of time. All this seemed connected to her previous life, which remained a mystery to her. Memories of those moments did not give her peace, and sometimes surfaced in the most unexpected places and situations. Lupa explained that the music is directly related to Lady Anastasia's birthday, which may have more meaning than just a celebratory sound and may hide important events or secrets. The gentleman noted that they had already discussed this point before, and it seemed there was no point in returning to it again, since everything was clear and understandable. But Lupa, visibly alarmed, remained silent, not answering immediately. His silence was filled with fear and doubt that something had really gone wrong. The gentleman then said that he thought it was worth checking everything again to make sure nothing was missing and all the details were accurate. The gentleman could not understand the reason for such persistence, and Lupa asked him not to be angry at what he was about to say, because the truth was more important than any emotion. The gentleman felt that this was not necessary, but Lupa begged, emphasizing that in the end, he was risking his own life, putting everything on the line to find out the truth. The gentleman thought that perhaps he too was ready to make a promise, tying it on his little fingers to show the seriousness of his intentions. Lupa said he felt that Lady Anastasia and Lady Regina might be connected much more strongly than they seemed at first glance, and that this connection could change a lot. The gentleman did not react to this statement at first, perhaps trying to comprehend what was said or hiding his true thoughts and feelings. Finally, he said that he considered Regina to be already dead, considering this connection unlikely and not worthy of further attention. Then Lupa was confused and did not know what to say to what was said. His thoughts were confused, and he tried to find words to explain the situation, but to no avail. He said that despite all their efforts, they were unable to locate the missing woman's body. This circumstance remained a mystery and raised many unanswered questions. If those who were close to Regina were able to escape and leave alive, and their daughter, Lady Anastasia, remained alive, then much in this story was shrouded in mystery and required further investigation. Due to the lack of accurate information, rumors and speculation about Anastasia's origins may have arisen, including suggestions that she may have been illegitimate, which could have greatly affected her reputation. The gentleman admitted that he understands these doubts, and he himself has often thought about whether it is worth conducting an investigation into Anastasia's past in order to find out the truth and close all questions. However, after listening to Lupa, he realized that they shouldn't dig too deep into the past because they found Anastasia in the orphanage, and perhaps it was better to leave some secrets unsolved. Suddenly, Lupa began to speak louder and more insistently, giving another reason why it was still important for them to find out who the girl's biological parents were and to sort this issue out to the end. The gentleman thought for a moment and asked what exactly would happen if they decided to conduct such an investigation and bring to light all the hidden facts that could affect Anastasia. He asked if Lupa was really going to tell her about her real parents since they had died long ago, and this knowledge could be a difficult test for her. The gentleman did not understand how the knowledge that she had outlived Regina could change Anastasia's attitude, but he understood that such a story would hardly please the girl herself, especially for a woman who married a man whose family initially disapproved of the marriage. Such secrets could indeed have serious consequences and trauma. The illegitimate child of the most powerful man in the world, the Duke would be his choice if he had to choose between only two such types. It seemed to him a very important and significant decision that could change many things. He felt like the second version made a lot more sense and weight, so he felt like he might have made a mistake. This realization made him wonder how things would play out next. Despite this, Lupa was always one step ahead, anticipating the Duke's thoughts and actions. His ability to see the situation deeper and earlier made him an indispensable assistant in difficult cases. He even thought about Gen's daughter, and it seemed incredible to him that such a thing was possible. A relationship and connection that might seem impossible at first glance. For Lupa, this was a complete shock, because he had not expected such a turn of events at all. His surprise was so strong that he could hardly believe what was happening. The gentleman asked Lupa if he really thought the girl was not like Regina. This question was important for understanding her origins and connections to other family members. To be honest, he felt like she didn't look like Regina at all, which made him doubt his assumptions about her relationship. However, she was so similar to the Duke that it was even frightening. The resemblance was striking and almost frightening, as if the Duke's very strength was reflected in her. It was very easy to confirm its origin, and there was clear evidence that no one could dispute. When they met at the orphanage, he saw how her black eyes seemed to absorb the light, as if the sun was disappearing inside them, and it was unusual and mesmerizing. At the time, he thought it was just an uncontrolled release of mana, something natural and random that could happen to mages. But later, it became clear that this was not just an outlier. It was clear evidence that she belonged to the Boreati family, and it could not be an accident. The beast's fangs were a distinctive feature that set her apart from others and confirmed her belonging to a strong and unusual blood. The next day, they had lunch, and the girl was very happy when she saw Mr. A. Her face glowed with joy and hope. At the same time, the gentleman himself was emotionless. He maintained a cold and calm appearance, hiding his true feelings under a mask of indifference. He suddenly turned to Anastasia, and this action showed that she now played an important role in the events taking place and was the center of the Duke's attention. He said that their amazing idea would definitely be tried next time, because now was not the time for experiments. Everyone was waiting with interest to see the result of her plan in action. The girl was the real creator of the idea of Fileo Boreotti, and her imagination generated more and more bold ideas that could change the course of events around them. The only ones who would suffer in such cold weather were the frozen knights forced to stand guard despite the frost and the strong wind that penetrated under their armor. Everyone understood that it would have been better to carry out what they had planned yesterday. Then the situation could have turned out differently, and they would not have to be tormented by regrets about the delay now. At that moment, The girl rose from her chair and went to the gentleman to discuss with him an important question that had been bothering her for several minutes in a row. The maid gave her her outerwear, and the girl was sincerely grateful for such care, because it was very cold outside, and without it she would have frozen. The girl compared her cape to Superman's cape, emphasizing that it looks exactly like that. Impressive and unusual, as if she herself had become a comic book hero. The gentleman didn't understand what was going on, and the girl explained that Superman is a man who wears underwear over his clothes, which seems funny and ridiculous at the same time. The gentleman asked with interest whether such people really existed, and whether it did not seem perverted to wear clothes in such a strange way. The girl assured that this is not a perversion, but simply a personal preference, nothing more, and that every person has the right to choose how they feel more comfortable and pleasant to look. However, she acknowledged that such people are often called perverts, even if it is just a misunderstanding or unfamiliarity with their choice. The gentleman thought about the fact that she still often called him a pervert, and it became clear to him that this word could have different connotations depending on who said it. She claimed that for a real Superman, clothes are not the most important thing. The most important thing is his body. Strong, broad shoulders and big muscles that make him strong and invincible in any fight. Her father warned her that if she moved so quickly and stumbled sooner or later, she would definitely fall and break her nose, which could lead to unpleasant consequences. After some time, the maid brought a book for her mistress. She carefully placed it on the table, expecting the girl to become interested and start reading, because books were important to her. The Duke, interested, took the book and looked closely at the cover to understand what kind of work his ward had chosen this time and what in it might interest her. The title of the book was There Is No Meaning in Life. This title immediately caught the attention, making one think about its content and the meaning it was trying to convey to the reader. He asked her what she thought about it. She replied that the book seemed too childish to her, but the Duke noted that for children, her age, such books are exactly what are needed to understand the basics. The girl said that she had almost finished the book, which seemed incredible to him, because he himself could not have finished it in such a short time. He asked where she got the book. She replied that she found it in his library, and he said that she could take whatever she wanted from there, since she was old enough to choose her own reading. The Duke asked her why she had chosen this particular book, since the title was quite dark. She admitted that she had simply been intrigued by the title, which seemed unusual to her. She then added that it seemed that life really was meaningless, and was surprised that he had not thought of this before, since in her opinion this knowledge should be obvious. After this, the Duke thought about how hard it must have been in the orphanage, where she lived before, and what difficulties she had to endure before ending up here in his house. After that, he gently asked Anastasia if she ever wanted to see her real parents. This question was important, but the girl looked at him with incomprehension. She quietly replied that she did not know them, and had never known them. In her memory, there were no faces, no memories of those who could have been close to her before the shelter. Anastasia noted that she does not remember anything from the time before the shelter. The entire past seemed to have been erased, leaving only emptiness and ignorance. Now she says he is her dad, and she really doesn't remember anything about her real parents. It was as important to her as it was incomprehensible. She felt nothing for those she couldn't remember, no emotion or affection, just emptiness and a slight sadness in her soul. The saddest thing for her was that she didn't know these people and would never be able to meet them. This created emptiness and melancholy inside. The girl thought that one day she would need to remember them in order to understand herself and her past, to fill this gap in her life. But her father told her that everything would be fine, and she didn't have to remember if she didn't want to. This took the extra pressure and fear off her. He picked her up and gave her another candy, as if supporting and comforting her, letting her know that she was safe now. Anastasia was very happy when she saw her favorite strawberry milk candies again. It was a small, bright moment among everything. He said the main thing she remembered was that he was her father now. For him, that was confirmation of the connection between them, even if it wasn't always visible. He thought she had forgotten about it because she never called him Dad, and that was what worried him the most. The girl explained that this was because she was not yet accustomed to this new status, to the role and words that seemed strange to her. She thought he wanted to fight her about it, but he said it was just an excuse, and he didn't really mean anything. The gentleman also asked to look into his eyes to see her true feelings, hoping to read something important in her gaze. She couldn't understand why she was the one being looked at so intently, as if someone was trying to read her thoughts or uncover some secret hidden deep inside. This attention was unusual and alarming. After it was all over, the gentleman demanded that everyone leave the room, leaving only his daughter in it. The atmosphere immediately became more tense and personal, as if something important was being prepared. The gentleman immediately stated that he did not like to waste time on long conversations or roundabout ways. He spoke directly without embellishment, preferring clarity and frankness in communication with loved ones. He was referring to those people who are nothing special themselves, but act as if they can do anything and are above everyone else. This behavior irritated and confused him. Perhaps he had some unpleasant memories associated with this type of people, or it was simply his character that did not allow him to tolerate such behavior. He himself did not fully know why this was so. He said that he intended to be as honest with her as possible, since it seemed that she was his niece. This statement threw the girl into a slight confusion. She did not expect such words from him. The girl was so shocked by what she heard that she didn't even know how to react to it correctly. This turn of events seemed so unexpected and strange to her. She remained confused. The gentleman said that she was an orphan he had found in a shelter. These words sounded like an attempt to explain the whole situation, to show that her fate was important to him. She didn't even want to think about how he could come to that conclusion and why he chose her to make that statement. Questions swirled in her head, but there was no answer. He noticed that her last name was Boreati, and she herself began to suspect that this could simply be a coincidence of no significance to their current relationship. The girl's black hair became confirmation for him. It was a genetic sign of belonging to the Boreati house. For him, it was an important proof of kinship and connection between them. The impudent child, sensing the interest of the master, unconsciously showed him her fangs, a sign of inner strength and rebelliousness that awakened in her when communicating with him. The glint in her eyes was perceived by the master as a manifestation of mana, an energetic force that she could release to protect herself. It seemed to him a sign of ability and a special nature. Young mages usually rely on a natural defense mechanism that is triggered automatically. But this time it was not about mana, but about something else, something unusual and deeper, which they did not yet understand. The gentleman asked if she knew what fangs were, implying a special power or condition that was rarely revealed in ordinary people. His voice was calm, but there was interest and anticipation in it. The girl answered that she knew at that very moment, when his eyes suddenly changed color, and a thirst for blood appeared in his gaze, as if something ancient had awakened in him. It was disturbing and at the same time fascinating. He noted that she didn't really know what fangs were, although her eyes sometimes glowed strangely in the orphanage. This was explained by her power resonating with his, creating an unusual mutual influence. The girl felt that this feeling she was experiencing right now was exactly that resonance between their powers. But surprisingly, this time she was not afraid, although before such things always scared her. He explained that it all happened because he didn't want to scare her. On the contrary, his task was to check whether she had this ability without frightening her unnecessarily. It was more of a test than a threat. Lion's fangs, he says, can resonate with those who possess similar powers, creating a special connection and understanding between them, almost like an invisible thread that connects the chosen ones. The girl could not yet finally verify and be sure that she really belonged to the Boreati family. Everything seemed too strange and unreal, as if it was a dream, not reality. She thought it was just a fantasy or a dream, but he noted that if it were, she would have to pinch herself hard to make sure it was real, because everything seemed too alive now. The girl didn't even understand how it all happened. Events were developing too quickly, and she was simply trying to keep track of what was happening without losing touch with reality and with what she felt inside herself. She asked who her real parents were then, because everything around her seemed confusing, and the answers she was given were not satisfactory and only gave rise to new questions. He said that her parents were his older cousin, a woman about whom there were various rumors, and who, despite her complexity, was the only one who could be close to her by blood. This woman was the most annoying in the world, unpredictable, and difficult, but she was her blood relative, albeit with a huge number of contradictions and problems. Varia and the Dark Beast were something new to the girl characters from a book she loved to read in another world, and now she realized that these stories somehow echoed her own life. The Lord of the North, Duke Boreati, was known for his strength and wisdom. His name inspired respect, and the gaze of those around him often stopped on him as a sign of respect and admiration. Countess Varia Albonea, his constant companion, always walked by his side. She was graceful and intelligent, possessed an extraordinary charm that always attracted the attention of everyone around her. There in the notebook, their love story was laid out, full of passion and trials which developed over the years and left a deep mark on their destinies. The story seemed cliched familiar and simple, as if it had been repeated in countless novels. But for them, it was real and unique, filled with feelings. But one day, the girl opened her eyes and realized that she was in the body of a child. It was a shock for her. She did not understand how and why she ended up in such a position. Looking around, she could not understand who all these people were next to her, why they seemed alien and incomprehensible to her in this strange world. When she finally came to her senses, she realized that she had not become a noblewoman or an aristocrat, as in those fantasy novels that she had previously read. Instead, fate left her an orphan, penniless, alone, and helpless, but with a desire to survive and find her place. At that moment, she noticed a carriage with a black lion sign, which immediately evoked familiar feelings and memories of something important. She immediately realized that this carriage belonged to someone powerful and important, and she realized that her life could change dramatically. At that very moment, seeing this carriage, she realized that she had entered a completely different world full of secrets and opportunities where much would depend on her choice. That is why she decided for the first time to take a risk and step out of her comfort zone to try to change her destiny. Working as a maid for the Duke, she could earn significantly more than simply living in an orphanage while gaining at least a modicum of independence. But fate decreed otherwise. The Duke decided to adopt her, which came as a great surprise to her and raised a lot of questions. This decision shocked her greatly. She could not understand why he was doing this, because just recently he called her his niece. Never before had she imagined that things could turn out this way, and it completely changed her outlook on what was happening. Now, her life was on the verge of change, and everything that seemed familiar suddenly turned out to be not so simple and predictable. She thought that having a niece was normal and even good, and she felt that this was definitely not in the original story. It added something new and unusual to the situation, but overall, it seemed plausible. However, it was impossible to just tell such secrets during the game. It seemed wrong and strange. Such things are usually kept secret, but here, everything happened too openly and spontaneously, which embarrassed those around. After this, the girl quickly ran away, but the footman stopped her, asking her not to hurry and not to run away so abruptly, because she should not be so tired and run without measure. The girl remembered her father's words, who said that she could only talk about what she really wanted to, and nothing more, while being careful and respectful of others. Already in her room, she made up her mind and told the footman that she wanted to share with her one secret that she had kept to herself for a long time and was afraid to reveal to others. The girl locked the door, and the footman immediately suggested that they sit down first to talk calmly and not rush, because the secret was important and required attention. The girl was ready to begin her story, but the footman asked what secret she was going to talk about in order to understand how serious the conversation would be. The girl noted that the Duke had told her something, and the footman became interested, saying that he talked a lot, and she would like to understand what exactly he was talking about. The girl explained that he told her about her mother, which was unexpected and had a strong impact on her, since it concerned their family and the secrets of the past. Then the footman immediately understood everything, feeling the importance of what she heard, and realized that the situation was serious and required a special approach. But a second later, the footman cried out, asking what exactly was being discussed, because what she had heard was so unexpected that she wanted to clarify the details. The girl said the Duke said her mother was his cousin, which shocked her and changed her view of their relationship and family history. The footman was interested in how exactly he had come to understand this important thing, and asked about it in more detail, wanting to understand what his conviction was based on and why he was so sure. The girl noted that the animal had fangs, and he said that she had the same ones. This was unexpected and strange information that made her think. He also mentioned that her mother had fangs too, but only earlier when she was younger, and this added mystery to their conversation. The footman was shocked and did not know how to react to such news. Her emotions were confused, and she tried to comprehend what she had heard. The girl made an effort not to cry anymore, trying to pull herself together and not show weakness at such a difficult moment. The footman explained that she was very sorry that she accidentally cried because she did not want to show her feelings. The tears just burst out on their own. All this meant that the person named Regina had really died, and now it became clear that this was not just a rumor, but the bitter truth. The footman was sincerely grateful to the girl for her care and attention, which helped her cope with the bitterness and sadness in her soul. Anastasia assured her that everything was fine and that she shouldn't worry too much. Her support and understanding helped her stay calm. The girl assumed that the Duke had not seen her mother, and that was why he had no clear idea of who this woman really was. The footman, however, stated that things were different, and that the leader, Regina, was not at all such a bad person as they tried to make her out to be. Now the girl finally understood that Regina was her mother's name, and this thought filled her heart with new feelings and memories. The footman noted that Regina was a person who may not have had much common sense, but that did not make her any worse or less important. She knew that these were the words that had to come from someone like her, and even the Duke thought of her in the same way, despite everything that was happening around him. She was incredibly beautiful and kind-loved romance, and always stood for peace in all its forms wherever she went. She was respected and appreciated, and Lady Regina was especially warm to the Duke. It was unclear whether it was because they both had no siblings, but she followed him around constantly, just to stay close without missing a minute. Then Anastasia realized that in reality, Regina was just a pain in the ass for everyone, the one that was hard to put up with, but impossible to get rid of. In her experience from another world, there is nothing worse than a stupid idealist who stubbornly clings to her ideals, not noticing reality and not wanting to hear other people's opinions. The reason why Regina didn't appear in the romantic line was because Filio didn't pay any attention to her from the very beginning, ignoring her persistence and whims. His cousin was too annoying, and so he did not care about her leaving her without attention and without giving her any reason to hope for anything more. Even Anastasia felt a little sorry for her mother, who tolerated such behavior and could not change the situation by staying on the sidelines. Despite everything, she decided to ask directly what really happened to Regina, and finally put the question to rest, hoping for an honest answer. The footman did not know how to break the news, and so at first she simply remained silent, unable to find the words to tell the truth, which could be unpleasant. Then the footman made up her mind and said that Regina had simply run away without explaining the details, so as not to stir up the past and create unnecessary problems. It turned out that she had fallen in love with a wandering knight, which was the reason for her escape, and left many confused, but made them understand her motives. Because of this attitude, the footman did not approve of their relationship and believed that such behavior was wrong, not supporting her choice, and considering it a mistake. Leader Regina decided to flee her family with her lover. She no longer wanted to stay where she felt bad and decided to look for a new life away from her old problems and obligations. At that moment, Anastasia realized that it was better not to ask unnecessary questions. Her curiosity could only lead to pain and disappointment, so she decided not to delve into what she did not want to know. The story of the mysterious wandering knight was clearly a lie made up by someone close to them. It was just an attempt to hide the real events and the truth, which could cause a lot of pain and inconvenience. The footman assured her that Anastasia would understand everything herself over time when she grew older and gained more life experience. For now, she just needed to live and accept what was happening without haste. In addition, the footman decided to ask Anastasia if she ever wanted to meet her mother. Although he understood that this was a difficult question that was not so easy to answer right away, the girl replied that she was grateful for what she had been told about her mother. It was important for her to know at least something, even if it was a little and not everything at once, in order to put together a complete picture in her head. It was the only question she could allow herself to ask before without fear that the answer would hurt or upset her. The Duke was amazed that Anastasia had no desire at all to learn more about her parents. He could not understand how one could be so indifferent to one's origins. The girl looked at the gentleman with a slight question in her eyes, as if expecting him to explain her incomprehensible behavior and attitude towards the past. She wondered if she really should cry and be sad about people she didn't even remember and had never been close to. Anastasia tried not to think too deeply about the past, so as not to drag on herself the burden of other people's feelings and memories that were not hers. Instead, she wanted to focus on the future and build her life the way she saw fit, without looking back or clinging to what had come before. Suddenly, the gentleman stroked her head, and she did not immediately understand why he did it, but she felt that there was some support and gentle care in this gesture. He noticed that if he thought about it, she was more like him than Regina. The comparison had come out of nowhere, and he had said it without any particular meaning, simply stating a fact. Because of this, the girl was a little embarrassed, feeling awkward, and simply turned away. She felt uncomfortable looking up at him after such a remark, as if she herself did not expect to hear such a thing. Then she said that it meant she had at least some common sense. This answer seemed quite logical to her, and she wanted to justify herself somehow to explain that it was not that simple. The girl also added that she wanted to see Mrs. Connie and the other children from the orphanage. She was drawn there to where her friends and those who were dear to her remained, even if this place was far away. The gentleman replied that they all lived in a shelter on the Boreati family property, and he would definitely take her there when the weather got better. It was his promise to show her a place where she could feel part of something. The girl was delighted and immediately declared that this was his promise, and she would wait for this moment with impatience. A spark of hope and light joy appeared in her eyes, but then she noticed that he had to work and probably had a lot to do. Her concern that he was too busy was genuine, and she wondered how to reconcile it all. At the same time, she had this strange feeling that he wasn't working at all, but was just passing the time. She couldn't understand what he was doing, and why it seemed that he had almost no time for things. He in turn seemed to think that she should take more care of herself and try not to spill anything while eating so as not to create unnecessary problems. Such a remark seemed to be concern with a touch of slight severity. He asked how much longer she would wear that apron. The question sounded without any malice, more like an observation and a slight mockery of her choice. The girl explained that it was just part of the outfit. It was part of a set of clothes and was not intended for constant use, but only an element that she had to wear. He noted that last time she had gotten crumbs and drool all over while eating, and the girl had tried to explain to him that it had only happened once and that he shouldn't take it so seriously. He assured that he would be able to eat without spilling a drop, even if he lacked teeth, showing confidence in his strength and dexterity, despite possible difficulties. He suggested that she simply observe and learn from her outstanding father. But the girl did not understand what exactly she should learn, because for her it all seemed incomprehensible and strange. The gentleman said that he would soon not be able to come to her, so often hinting at upcoming changes and difficulties that would prevent their frequent meetings. She asked why this was so, and he replied that the time would soon come when the beasts would begin to attack, creating a threat and danger to everyone around. The girl noted that the warning sounded too childish, because a father should be happy about such a special daughter and not scare her with horror stories. The gentleman responded by saying that she should also be happy because she had an unusual father, strong and wise, even if he was sometimes harsh and strict. The Boreati family's territory was full of monsters and dangers, so much so that it could be called a real nest of monsters. The area around them was so filled with threats that every step required caution and strength to avoid getting into trouble among these creatures. Adjusting his hair, he said that when the storm passed, they would need to help the knights reduce losses and save lives. His words meant that there was a difficult struggle ahead, and everyone must be prepared for difficult work and hard trials. After that, he asked her to turn away now, so that he could do something important and personal without her gaze. He took her hair in his hands and began to do something on her head concentratedly and carefully, as if performing a ritual or an important action. He added that they would finish faster if the weather was sunny, hinting that luck and light would help them in this matter. But when the wind starts to blow stronger, they can stay longer because the weather has a greater effect on people than on monsters. It always changes the plans and mood of those around. He promised that he would definitely take her where she needed to go later. But now was not the time. She had to wait until the right moment came for this important step. He carefully tied a bow for her, and she, not understanding the reason, exclaimed with surprise and incomprehension, asking why they were taking her there, and why there in particular. The gentleman explained that this was because she was his saintly successor. That was why he had brought her here in the first place, because this place was especially important to her. She noticed that he still lived too impulsively, and was surprised that they were even planning to get married, as if it was the end of their relationship. He replied that it was much more fun for a holy child to be free and play than to think about marriage and the obligations that came with it. This seems to indicate that he clearly has a crush on Lupe and likes it, even though he doesn't admit it out loud. She said that was why she told him this, because if Lupa repeated such a prank one more time, he would deprive her of all the sweets that she loved so much. Anastasia decided not to take risks and kept silent so as not to create unnecessary problems for herself and not to provoke unwanted consequences. She quickly explained that it was just a joke to ease the tension and prevent the situation from developing further into a conflict. At this moment, the maid came in with a tray of sweets, and the girl sincerely thanked her for such a gift, which raised her spirits. He noticed how she was looking closely at the cookies, as if choosing the most delicious ones, and this could not help but make him smile and feel some surprise. Come to think of it, he is too formal and official in his dealings with the servants, which makes the atmosphere in the room a bit tense and distant. The girl admitted that in general this was true. She spoke to him informally and without much ceremony, because she felt free, but at the same time, she understood that in other cases, she needed to behave differently. She was surprised to learn that he too had to be spoken to formally, as if he were someone important. This was a surprise to her, as she was used to more casual communication. He explained that such informal behavior was perceived as rudeness, and she needed to break this habit in order to maintain respect in her interactions with others. She was told not to rush into changes, because over time, her behavior would get used to the new norms, and she would learn to behave more correctly. In addition, Anastasia asked for a book to be given to her, and after this, the maid was instructed to fulfill her request, expecting that everyone would fulfill their duties without delay. The gentleman noted that the issue is not who submits the book, but that it can simply be bought for money, and material issues will decide a lot here. The maids were stunned by the master's statement. It was difficult for them to understand why he spoke so harshly about money and his attitude towards their work. He then announced that from that moment on, all the servants were fired, which caused a real shock in the house since no one expected such drastic measures. The girl was completely horrified. She could not understand what was happening and why the gentleman made such a decision. Everything seemed incomprehensible and scary to her. She tried to find out the reasons for this decision by asking questions, but the answers did not bring relief, but only aggravated her anxiety. The gentleman explained that he could not understand how a member of the Boreati family could allow himself to address ordinary servants so formally and coldly, violating the rules. As the head of the house, he could not turn a blind eye to such a disciplinary problem, feeling that it was detrimental to the atmosphere and respect in the house. He believed that even a severe punishment, such as cutting off ears, would be too lenient compared to what the situation required. Having shown his strictness, he decided to limit himself to taking their jobs away from them, and ordered everyone to pack their things and come to the main hall to decide the fate of the dismissal. Then the girl said that she now understood. I will stop addressing them formally and will behave more simply, without the previous formalities, which seemed too heavy and alien to her. She noticed that he threatened to fire the entire staff, and in her opinion, he was not just strict, but a real monster, much worse than any monster she could think of. The gentleman replied that he had said nothing of the sort, and had not at all meant what she had understood, leaving her completely perplexed as to his words and intentions. The girl was very angry with him for this, but he only said that all this needs to be learned and accepted as part of life, because otherwise there is no way to cope with something like this. He added that there is no problem in the world that cannot be solved with money. This was his main motto and the basis of all his actions. The girl, feeling tired, lay down on his lap, and he responded by saying that if that was the case, she should stop messing around and start acting seriously. He promised to introduce her as a knight before they left, and this was a kind of motivation that should help her overcome her laziness and fear. The girl noticed that there was a snowstorm and cold outside, and he said that these were just excuses, like she needed to make a little more effort because the weather was not a reason to stand still. Then the gentleman said that she always had excuses, but she reminded him that he himself was not in much of a hurry and sometimes just lazed around with her. After a few minutes, they got dressed, and Isir announced that it was time to go because time was running out and they needed to move forward according to plan. At first, he lifted the girl into his arms, carrying her, but then carefully lowered her to the floor, indicating that it was now time for her to walk on her own, despite her fatigue and doubts. The girl could not verify whether she was really his relative because she had no documents or other evidence, and this left many questions and doubts. He had a beautiful face, but at the same time, there was something about him that frightened those around him. His gaze and expression created a feeling of hidden power that was difficult to understand and accept at once. He was the typical protagonist, as he was usually imagined, although it cannot be said that his character was too outstanding or complex. He remained rather simple and straightforward. She made it so that Mr. wasn't going to take her back. It was unexpected and a little disconcerting because it seemed like the situation should have gone differently. He wondered who she thought he was. His question sounded surprised and slightly ironic, as if he couldn't understand where she got such thoughts about him from. But then he noticed that she looked a little scared, and that changed his attitude. He realized that her fear was not just an emotion, but a reflection of something deeper. He said she was his daughter. The words sounded decisive, as if he had taken on a new role and responsibility he had not previously considered. He was going to be responsible for her until the end, no matter what. This promise sounded serious, showing that he was ready to change for her. Then the girl smiled slightly, feeling support and protection in his words. It was her first sincere reaction in a long time. She said she didn't like dads who teased other kids. Her words were hurt and misunderstood. She wanted a real father, not one who hurt. Then the gentleman smiled, as if understanding her feelings. His smile was soft and a little kind, which immediately relieved the tension in the room. She left after hearing some strange sounds and turned her head in that direction, trying to understand the source of the noise. This movement was instinctive and showed her curiosity. Anastasia noticed something unusual happening around her, and someone gently touched her hand to draw her attention. She was told to look up, and she obeyed. The girl was absolutely delighted when she saw what was above. This sight caused her sincere admiration and surprise, making her forget about everything else. She realized it was on the ceiling and immediately became very scared. Fear gripped her because she couldn't explain what she had seen or what it meant to her. The lady explained that the inscription supposedly made by one of their ancestors actually has a different meaning. She was trying to convey the idea that it may not just be a family heirloom, but something more mysterious and meaningful. The engraving depicted a huge lion, a symbol of strength and power. The girl noted that such a drawing evoked a strange feeling of anxiety, as if it were something from nightmares, capable of disturbing dreams and awakening night terrors. The father noted that if the ceiling collapsed, it would create problems, but at the same time, it would release some energy, something like an aura that could change the space around it. Aura is a special energy field that develops in the human body with regular and intense physical exercise. It manifests and strengthens through training and internal efforts. For magicians, the aura is an innate ability that they receive through the power of the mind and an internal connection with magical flows differing from ordinary people by their nature. For ordinary people, aura is an acquired ability associated with the body and the strength of physical exertion. It requires time and effort to develop and is not given just like that. However, developing an aura requires both innate talent and persistent training. In their knightly order, there are only 3 knights known to be able to release their aura, which makes them special and powerful. One of the knights even exhibits a rare form of aura, which arouses the interest of the girl, who asks if her father can also release such energy. Father replied that he had a stronger and more unusual ability that surpassed the simple release of aura, so he did not have to use this technique. Then the girl finally realized that he had animal fangs, and this fact irritated her as much as before. He remained as annoying as he always was, despite his abilities. He noticed that she also had the same ability, similar to his, and he found it interesting. She could also manifest her fangs, and this opened up new possibilities for her. Now she had to learn how to use this ability correctly so that it would bring benefits and not just hinder. This became an important task for the girl, which she had to master. The girl said that when her fangs awakened, she would bite him first, as a warning and a demonstration of her powers. It was her way of showing that she too could be strong and dangerous. But he said he would bite her first, which caused the girl to respond by promising to bite his chest faster than he could. A kind of playful competition arose between them. The gentleman asked why the girl was so fixated on the bodies of others, on other people's bodies, but she replied that it was wrong and that she shouldn't immediately think about everything pervertedly in the morning. After that, she demanded that he listen to her carefully and admitted that she loved strong muscles, emphasizing that this was her true preference and not some strange fantasy. She simply liked strong muscular bodies, and there was nothing unusual about it. That's all she wanted to convey to him at that moment. The girl again tried to explain that she was attracted to a strong body and strength, and not to anything else that might seem suspicious or strange. At this time, the knights were training, when suddenly her screams were heard, in which she confidently declared that she loved muscles and did so loudly and clearly. Some of the knights thought they were hallucinating because they did not expect to hear such words from her and were slightly stunned by this unexpected frankness. She admitted that she loved strong muscles and strength, but it seemed that those she saw did not have any hallucinations. Everything was real, without distortions of perception. They thought that some strange or twisted individual had somehow entered the training center and was causing all this confusion and strange events. Moreover, they did not fully understand where all these loud screams and noise were coming from, which only added to the anxiety and misunderstanding of what was happening around them. After some time, they managed to discern that the Duke was heading towards them, but this was the only thing they could determine for sure, due to the general excitement and confusion. The gentleman was holding a girl in his arms, and this surprised everyone present. No one expected to see her held in such a way. The knights immediately lined up and prepared to greet their lord, as was customary, demonstrating their respect and devotion. The gentleman looked closely at his daughter and explained that the reason was that this time the weapon had chosen the groom and not the traditional fighter. The girl asked what exactly he meant, and the gentleman replied that it was because his muscles could not compare with her strength and endurance. She stated that today he intended to drive her to a state of complete insanity, implying that the tests would be extremely difficult and intense. He noticed that despite her attempts to catch her breath, she was fine, and he believed that she still had many great achievements and challenges ahead of her. They argued among themselves for quite a long time, and the knights stood there in complete bewilderment, not understanding how to react to this unexpected situation. Their faces expressed a mixture of surprise and confusion. Suddenly, the knight interrupted the argument and asked everyone to pay attention to him so that he could clarify what was happening and direct the conversation in the right direction. His voice was calm, but insistent. The girl noticed a familiar face among those present. Her Anna, the knight who was always there and gave her a feeling of security and trust. Her eyes immediately lit up with joy. Seeing Anna, the girl was very happy and without hesitation began to actively wave her hand to attract attention and show how happy she was to see a familiar face among strangers. The gentleman noted that everyone had worked well that day, appreciating the efforts of each participant and emphasizing that their joint work was bringing tangible results and success. He decided that it would be useful if everyone got to know each other better, so that in the future they could hunt monsters together and work together as a real team where everyone understands each other. He then introduced the girl as his daughter, so that no one would doubt her status and role, and also to emphasize her importance in the upcoming work and relations with the knights. The knights introduced themselves one by one, voicing their names and ranks. They were warriors of the Order of Glasgow, specially called to protect the northern lands from dangers and monsters. The first to speak was the Deputy Captain Monocaris, who greeted everyone on behalf of the knightly order and expressed hope for fruitful cooperation in the upcoming affairs. The girl responded to the greeting, briefly introduced herself, showing respect and willingness to interact with new acquaintances in order to jointly achieve their goals. The gentleman smiled, looking at his daughter, feeling pride and tenderness, understanding how important this acquaintance and support in a new environment was for her. He then asked how the preparations were going, and the knight reported that during his absence, there had been several reports of attacks by baby monsters on small towns, which required increased attention. It looks like this year's hunt will be much more difficult than last year. Everything has changed, and the upcoming test promises to be much tougher and more dangerous than they expected. The monsters that have appeared recently have become much more sensitive and dangerous. Their behavior has changed, and they have become much tougher in combat, which makes the task much more difficult. The girl looked at the knights attentively and asked to let her go. She wanted some freedom and not to be constantly under supervision so that she could feel the situation herself. She really enjoyed watching the knights, especially their powerful and trained muscles. This made her admire and wonder at their strength. The gentleman noticed that the girl was trying not to move away from Anna, as if she was deliberately staying close so as not to get lost or to feel safe. The girl didn't understand why this was so important and explained that it would make her less likely to pester others for attention and would make her behave more calmly. She added that she should not be considered some kind of pervert, as if her behavior was misunderstood and judged unfairly. In response to her words, he only laughed quietly, as if he did not take her explanation seriously, but without malice or reproach. The girl turned around and started to walk away, as if she had decided to leave the conversation and switch to something else so as not to create tension. She looked healthier than last time, and it was noticeable. It was good that she had already gotten used to this place and felt more confident here. The lady did not say that this place became her home from the very beginning, although that is how it was perceived internally, like a new native corner. It felt like this little girl made it lighter and warmer, as if she brought some special energy and light with her. Everything around seemed a little more inspired and alive when she was around, giving strength and support with her presence. In any case, she was already listed in the family register, and this gave her a certain status and secured her place among them. The gentleman reported that it had been registered for a long time and was listed in the documents, which caused them some surprise and bewilderment about this. They were truly amazed by this fact, not expecting that everything would turn out this way, and showed genuine surprise at such circumstances. She asked how Anna was feeling. The knight replied that everything was fine, thanks to the care of the lady, because the girl was growing up very sweet and healthy. Anastasia tried not to be intrusive, did not want to bother those around her, tried to behave quietly and not disturb anyone. The knight noticed that no one was really against it. Everyone was happy to see the girl proud of her presence and meetings with the lady. However, a very interesting remark came up in the conversation. It turned out that she really loves mussels, which seemed unusual. The girl confirmed this and said that she really feels a strong admiration for mussels and everything connected with them. Then, the knights posed for her, showing off their muscles and trying to demonstrate what she so appreciated and loved to see. They noted that one of them had a particularly keen gaze and muscles that, in their opinion, were necessary for true beauty and strength. They had never seen the lady so attracted to such things before, which left them with mixed feelings. Some knights found this strange and even disgusting, not understanding why they had to expose themselves like this and why it aroused interest. However, when they saw how Anastasia was genuinely happy about this, many were very surprised and slightly revised their opinions. Of all the rumors that the knights believed there were only two main ones, that the lady had been taken from the shelter and about her origin. The first rumor was that the lady had indeed been taken from an orphanage, which explained her somewhat unusual appearance. The second was that she was considered the illegitimate daughter of the Duke, which became the cause of much talk and gossip. Her health was poor, and when she first came to the estate, no one really talked about it, although everyone was a little worried and concerned about the girl, as if a cloud was hanging over them. Now everyone was happy that the girl was healthy and could smile freely, giving warmth to everyone around her. This fact gave hope and relief, because before the situation seemed completely different. Although she herself was not sure to what extent this behavior and condition of the girl could be considered normal and usual for children of her age, it caused her some doubts. It seemed to her that there were no families in the world where children loved mussels as much as this girl, and that this was somehow unusual and even strange for those around her. The girl looked at the mussels with such lively interest and admiration that sometimes it even seemed frightening. It was so unusual and strongly expressed. The father stood to the side, silently observing what was happening, not interfering, and simply accepting everything that was happening around him in a calm and serious mood. He asked if the children of knights behaved in a similar way, wondering if they had the same oddities and peculiarities in behavior. The knights replied that they were interested in understanding what exactly he meant, because the girl's behavior seemed somewhat unusual and strange to them. Then his lordship explained that the girl was too much interested in mussels, and everyone noticed this, but at the same time, he emphasized that it was quite normal for children of her age to show interest in things that adults found incomprehensible. He gave an example that even those boys when they were her age were into strange things like collecting cookie wrappers, which seemed pointless to adults. The daughter of one of the knights even filled the chest with stones to the top, and this was also unusual, but no one thought it was strange, rather funny and cute. One of the knight's sons collected insect corpses, talked about it in detail, and everyone listened with interest, discussing similar childish quirks in their children. The girl's father was hearing such stories about other people's experiences for the first time, and was surprised that he was able to feel sympathy and understand other parents, although he usually remained detached. He noticed that the gentleman had recently become a father, and asked if he was experiencing any difficulties or worries associated with fatherhood, since it was a new and important role in life. The gentleman was silent at first, but after a minute, he decided to say a few words. He noted that his daughter was really very smart, and this was immediately obvious to everyone who spoke to her. No one present understood why he mentioned this, but he began to explain that the girl reads unusual books, knows how to express her thoughts well, and speak in such a way that it surprises everyone around her. After long conversations, they came to the unanimous opinion that the girl had put on a little weight recently, and this was good for her. She began to look even more beautiful and attractive to everyone. If she had been the only one in the Boreati family who could have earned the support of the nobility, then her success would have already been assured, because such girls were valued and respected for their abilities and charm. It was interesting to see how many more people she could win over with her looks and intelligence, because she had a real charm that could win the hearts of many. At that moment, they heard the little girl's voice, which distracted everyone from their conversations and made them pay attention to her. She interrupted the conversation with her sweet and ringing tone. The girl said that she really liked these mussels and asked to repeat what had just been shown. She wanted to see and feel this spectacle again. Then the gentleman suggested that the girl sing a good song in gratitude for allowing her to look at these mussels and enjoy such a performance. The girl thought for a moment and then began to sing, talking about how she loved mussels, and asked everyone to gather around to listen to her song and share her joy. She sang about the pectoral muscles, abdominal muscles, and others admiring them, and noting that all this is magnificent and deserves admiration, calling it a real miracle of nature. Then she started talking about the muscles below the waist, but those around her barely reacted to this, trying not to pay attention to this part of her singing, although the girl continued without embarrassment. The girl was very embarrassed by how everyone was looking at her and posing as if they were evaluating her performance, which made her feel slightly embarrassed and awkward. The knight and father did not even understand how to react to what was happening. Their faces expressed confusion, and their thoughts were confused. The situation turned out to be unexpected and difficult for them. The gentleman then noted that his own children had not shown such a violent reaction. This was confirmed by another person present, a woman who knew the family. According to her, their lady is a little unusual because deep down she is a genius with a slight dose of strangeness, which explains her special behavior. The next day, the holy girl went out into the street again. This time she was dressed in ordinary clothes, not standing out from the rest of the passers-by. The maid noticed that people got up very early today, which surprised her because they usually get up later. The girl explained that she simply got up early to go out onto the balcony and see what the weather was like today, interested in the small details of the world around her. She noted that a lot of snow had fallen overnight, and today she would be able to go outside for the first time to enjoy the freshness and view of winter. The maid added that the snowfall this year was really heavy, something that had not been seen for a long time, and it surprised everyone. The girl was amazed because the snow lay as thick and even as a golden carpet, almost as thick as an adult. The maid recalled that last year, the snow reached almost the third floor, which was very unusual and caused certain difficulties. All winter events in this estate traditionally take place on the third floor, and the girl was there recently too in the living room with the Duke. The maid asked her mistress what she would like to wear today, expecting to hear a specific choice or preference. The girl admitted that all the options look good, but she can't decide what exactly to choose for today. The maid then suggested that she choose a dress that was in the closet, and she was about to try it on, feeling that this outfit would be suitable for the upcoming events. At this time, the gentleman stood at the door of his room and heard the girl calling him quietly and insistently, drawing his attention to something important that she wanted to tell him. She put on the dress, and he thought she must have been having good dreams, because she looked rested and calm, as if all the bad things were behind her, and it showed. But the gentleman said that he did not believe that dreams in which she was alone could be good, and she became angry, noticing that he seemed to be going to argue with her again, or start a quarrel. He noticed that her face showed that she had indeed slept well, and was feeling refreshed, and her eyes were shining with confidence and lightness after a night's rest. The girl thought that he had just returned from training because there was still a slight dampness on his clothes and body, which indicated recent physical activity. He didn't immediately understand what she was talking about, and she added that he still smelled of soap, as if he had just taken a shower. And this made her smile and look slightly surprised. He helped her into a chair and said that he had forgotten something important, perhaps something that needed to be done before they could do other things, and it needed attention. They had already decided when they were going to go hunting for monsters. The plan was made in advance, and both understood that time was running out, and they needed to prepare seriously. The girl asked when exactly the trip would take place, because she wanted to understand how much time she had left to prepare, and he replied that it would happen tomorrow. She was very surprised by such a quick decision, and asked again why everything had to happen so soon, not expecting that the preparation would be so rapid. The gentleman explained that in fact, they were even a little late, because it would have been better to leave today, so as not to waste a minute and get everything done on time. The girl was surprised to hear this, and he added that he would set out on his journey after introducing her to her new mentors, an important step that must precede their work together. The next day, a lady with blonde hair came to them, whose appearance immediately attracted attention. She was elegant and looked very important, as if she belonged to high society. The girl was surprised and a little embarrassed. She did not quite understand who this lady was, but she felt that in front of her was a person of great status and experience who needed special attention. Next to her stood a man with blonde hair, who also looked noble, although more modest. The girl noticed that their greeting to each other was filled with respect and refined manners. They explained to her that this lady would teach her etiquette, and the man would teach her history. The girl immediately understood that she would now have to master many new rules and knowledge under their guidance. The girl who would teach etiquette was unusually beautiful, and Anastasia simply admired her grace and manners, which seemed almost magical to her. The man was also happy to meet her, and looked a little tired or lethargic, but his eyes were filled with interest in his work. He would become a history teacher for the girl. The Duke watched his daughter's reaction, carefully assessing her mood and readiness for a new stage in life where strict mentors would appear. He turned to the girl, and Anastasia immediately understood that this was important and serious, so she prepared herself to listen attentively and be an exemplary student. The girl immediately introduced herself and bowed. This is how she was taught to behave with high-ranking guests to show respect and good manners. When the lady and the teacher saw her behavior, they smiled. They liked her modesty and sincerity, which made the first impression very good. The Duke informed her that Countess Theodore would visit her once a week to study etiquette and monitor her progress in this important matter. The history teacher, in turn, would live in the mansion, which promised long and deep studies during which Anastasia would be able to learn a lot about the past and culture. The girl then asked the Duke if there was anything she especially needed to pay attention to in order to avoid making mistakes and getting into trouble. The Duke did not understand why she should be the one on guard. In his opinion, those around him should be the ones who should be most attentive and careful, and he was confident in their protection. He noted that in the northern lands, there is nothing that could threaten or make the girl afraid, even if she does something wrong. Everything is calm and under control here. The girl asked if it would always be like this, even if she ever hurt someone. He noted that this was too cruel an example, and there was no need to worry. It was better to think about how to behave with others. He added that she should treat people with the same care and respect as she would guests from the shelter, showing kindness and understanding in her communication. The girl said that this is exactly what she expected from people born with strength, from those who are used to being stronger and more influential than others. He also stressed that she should be grateful to him for the patience he shows with himself, and the girl admitted that she really appreciates it. The girl noted that she would be interested in learning about the people she would be studying with before classes began in order to better understand their characters. Mr. Ye explained that the history teacher was a very talented man who had previously been a professor, and his knowledge had always been highly valued. The Imperial Academy is a prestigious research institute where the best minds from across the empire gather to advance science and education. Due to its fame and influence, the Academy is called the third force of the empire, next to the state and the army recognizing its power. Most of the Academy members are graduates of the best capital educational institutions, which confirms the high level of training and professionalism. The Duke himself was a graduate of the Academy, and the girl wondered if there was anyone in the north as smart as her father. The gentleman remained silent in response, and simply looked at her attentively, not rushing to answer, which aroused even more curiosity in the girl. She decided to ask about the Countess, who would be teaching her etiquette, to learn more about the upcoming lessons and the person she would have to work with. He smiled and explained that this woman was the same one who had once stalked him, which caused surprise and bewilderment in the girl. Hearing this, the girl was shocked, not knowing how to react to it, because such a story seemed unexpected and difficult to understand to her. She didn't understand why he hired her at all, because his behavior seemed strange and unpredictable, as if he himself didn't know what he wanted from her and why he invited her. It was completely incomprehensible to her why such a person was needed at all, and why he decided to hire this particular woman, because from the girl's point of view, it seemed nonsense. He explained that no one could compare with her in the art of etiquette, and that she was well known in the capital, and also respected in the highest social circles, which was of great importance to him. He spoke this way not because he was stupid or ignorant, but on the contrary, because he understood how these social games were structured and why he needed it. The girl asked about the secondary society, to which he replied that this place was no better than the noble council, just as dirty and corrupt. At first glance, it may seem that the gathering of beautiful and noble ladies is simply a carefree conversation in a pleasant atmosphere. In reality, this is a real battlefield where greed rules and deals and intrigues are conducted secretly behind the backs of others and under the table. If the Academy is considered the third force in the empire, then the capital society ranks second in influence and power, determining the fate of many. She will definitely become a part of this society because it cannot be otherwise as long as she bears the name Boreati and is connected to this world. To be honest, he didn't want to send her there because he understood how difficult and dangerous it would be for her. The girl asked him to take her hand and not let go, as if trying to strengthen their connection and get support. He was surprised by such a demand and did not understand what she wanted from him and why she was asking for it. He extended his hand to her, but she immediately said that this was not quite what she had meant and that it should not be like this. Then she gently took his finger, showing that she wanted him to hold her just like that, symbolically and tenderly. She thought he didn't want it, because his gaze seemed loving and a little shy, as if he was afraid to make the first move. He simply said that it wasn't so without trying to attach any special significance to her actions, or to make sense of her actions as if everything that was happening didn't deserve an explanation. The girl smiled, showing no hesitation, and began to walk forward slowly, as if trying to get away from everything that could bother her without rushing or looking back. Her steps were so slow and measured that even the gentleman noticed how tired he was of such leisurely pace, because his patience was beginning to run out, and the wait seemed endless. The woman standing nearby was sweating slightly. Her gaze was firm and confident, as if she was ready to insist on her own and was not going to back down even a step. The girl said that she was going to sleep and learn something important, which meant that the gentleman should return quickly so as not to miss important events and maintain order. The gentleman seemed to remain silent, not wanting to enter into an argument or express his opinion, leaving everything as it was, as if not noticing what was happening around him. She also suggested that after his return from hunting, they go somewhere together, hinting at a future meeting that could unite them and give them a reason for joy. While the master was away, the girl decided not to show her feelings and not to cry, even if she suddenly missed him very much, because she firmly decided to remain calm and strong-willed. This made him smile as he noticed her blush slightly and become embarrassed, which added even more charm to her image and showed her sincerity and fragility. She couldn't say anything out loud, just like her father, hiding her true thoughts and feelings, as if afraid that words would change everything that was happening between them. The day of the monster hunt had arrived, a day when important matters were decided, and strength and skills were tested, foreshadowing new trials and unexpected events for everyone. The gentleman had already gathered prepared and was ready to go hunting, having collected everything necessary and prepared himself for the upcoming difficulties and dangers. Meanwhile, the girl slept tired and sleepy, her eyes slowly closing and she falling into a long and peaceful sleep to gain strength. It seemed to her father that it would be better if she simply lay down and rested, because in her condition, her mouth simply could not withstand the strain, and she could harm herself. But the girl said that she was very cold, and that she wanted to say goodbye to him in person, despite her tiredness, because saying goodbye was more important to her than anything else. He carefully picked her up in his arms, as if he wanted to remember this touch for a long time. At that moment, the girl quietly noted that he was leaving very soon, and this upset her. The Duke would have replied that she should go to bed now because she looked tired. He did not want her to suffer while waiting. It was better to gather strength beforehand. The girl said that she did not feel like sleeping at all, but he gently asked her not to force herself to stay awake for him. After all, he would still remember her care. Then she suddenly reminded him that she had brought him something special, something that would definitely please him before the journey. Her voice sounded with trepidation. The maid came over and opened a neat basket containing several cookies. They had been baked with love, especially for the Duke. The Duke was clearly taken aback. He had not expected such a warm farewell gesture. It looked sincere and touching, like something out of a children's fairy tale. He was so amazed that he could not understand when she had managed to prepare them. After all, the girl was in sight all the time. It seemed that she had never left. She explained that she and Anna prepared them at night, trying not to make any noise so as not to wake anyone. It was their little secret. The Duke felt at that moment how much she loved him, and he realized that her act was not accidental. She truly valued him. The girl added a few more treats to the basket. On some of the cookies, she drew a black lion, the symbol of family, and she set 2 cookies aside. She quietly wished him a safe journey, as if blessing him for something important. There was strength and tenderness in her voice at the same time. The girl added that when he returned, she would definitely bake something delicious for him. It was her promise as a sign of loyalty and love. As soon as she said this, her eyes slowly closed. She fell asleep right there, right in his arms, as if she felt that she had said everything. The Duke looked at the cookies in the basket. They seemed to him the most precious gift. They contained everything: care work and childish sincerity. He thought that there was nothing in the world tastier than these simple cookies, because behind them stood love and devotion, genuine and pure. He hugged his daughter tightly as he said goodbye. If anything stood in his way, he would not hesitate to destroy it. For her, for the family, for the future. He told her that while he was away, she would be the head of the Boreati family. He meant it. He really trusted her. Everyone who heard this was truly surprised. No one expected him to give such honor to a child, but maturity was already shining in her eyes. The Duke asked that everyone present take careful care of Anastasia. He wanted to be sure that she would be treated with care, as if she were the most precious pearl. He also emphasized that Anastasia should try hard in her studies. It was important to him that she make an effort and strive for the best without wasting time. He also asked her to go to bed early, eat well, and not be capricious. He hoped that such a routine would do her good. He himself noted that he had bulked up a bit, apparently meaning that he had become physically stronger to match the person who cared for his loved ones. Anastasia thought that he might be expecting an immediate answer from her, but she still hesitated, not knowing how to answer him. The Duke then turned to the knight, entrusting him with full responsibility for Anastasia, and ordering him to devote all his attention to her. The knight expressed confidence that he would follow the lady relentlessly. He assured the Duke that he would be by her side under any circumstances. The girl interested the Duke very much. There was something unusual in her behavior and look that made him stay close. That's why he was in no hurry to leave. Anastasia's presence calmed and drew him to herself, and parting with her was difficult for him. Anastasia got up early in the morning to see the Duke and the knights off. When she woke up again, the sun was already high above the horizon. She slowly stood up, changed into a more comfortable dress, and gathering her hair, went in search of the knight. After a light dinner, she approached the knight and asked if she could go hunting with him along with the others. The knight confirmed that the hunt would indeed take place, and assured that he would guard her until the Duke returned. Then Anastasia, with slight excitement, asked when she would be able to see the Duke again, and how long to wait for his return. The knight replied that this year they might be staying a little longer than usual, due to the current circumstances. The Duke helped in the capital for 3 years, fighting monsters and maintaining order, along with other knights. Despite their efforts, even the reduced number of monsters was still nothing compared to the situation when the Duke was there in person. Towards the end of the conversation, the knight accidentally mentioned the mating season, and Anastasia, not understanding anything, immediately asked about it again. He said that this is true love, the kind where the feelings grow stronger every day. They both feel it so deeply that they can't even stop, as if they feed off each other. The girl said with delight that love is something amazing. She spoke about it with special admiration, confident that such feelings really make life more beautiful. After that, the girl asked what usually happens next, when two people have already realized that they love each other. Her voice sounded calm, but her eyes showed genuine curiosity. The girl suddenly noticed that at the end of the long corridor, almost in the shadows, stood her history teacher. He seemed to be watching, but did not interfere, as if he wanted to remain unnoticed. She didn't know how to react to his unexpected appearance. She just stood there and looked at him, as if she couldn't bring herself to approach him, not knowing whether it was an accident or an intention. As she got closer to his office, she decided that he was probably just tired. Perhaps he had only stepped out for a moment to take a break from his work and get some fresh air. The teacher noted that in northern estates, everything necessary is usually placed on the 3rd floor, so that the inhabitants do not have to face inconveniences even in the cold. The girl concluded that he must have lived in the north. He did indeed confirm that he was from there, and there was a hint of nostalgia in his voice. He then turned back to Milady, smiling at her in a reserved but friendly manner. It seemed more like a gesture of support than a formal greeting. He handed her the book and asked her to begin the lesson. His voice was calm and even, and he held himself respectfully, as was appropriate in such circumstances. After some time, the girl herself taught etiquette lessons to Milady. She took this role seriously, trying to present knowledge carefully and clearly. She suggested starting with greetings, how to say hello properly. Although it may seem difficult at first, she promised to teach everything she knows. She reassured me that there was no need to be shy, because mistakes were part of learning. If something was unclear, she would always help and explain everything. When the girl said hello for the first time, the teacher was surprised to see that it had turned out just fine. He praised her, saying that he had not expected such rapid progress. But despite this, she understood that there were still many difficulties ahead. Everything that had happened before was only the beginning, albeit a successful one, but far from simple. The lady realized that Milady was truly amazing. Deep down, she was a little worried, because she had not expected such maturity and intelligence from young Anastasia. Immediately after this, the teacher, realizing her harshness, hastily apologized for the words spoken in the heat of the moment, even if there was some truth in them. She noticed that Anastasia's teddy bear was remarkably reminiscent of the Duke. The same noble look, calmness, and graceful bearing as an adult man. That's why she decided that it was worth focusing on what my lady was still lagging behind in. Although old habits got in the way, she had to try despite the difficulties. The difficult task of teaching Milady everything she had missed fell on her shoulders, and although it would not be easy, she was determined that she would cope and see it through to the end. Even if the world seemed fictitious, it was still full of dangers, and any careless step could turn into a tragedy, literally digging your own grave. The girl was sitting at the table at lunch, next to the history teacher. They were alone, and no one was disturbing them. The moment of solitude turned out to be very opportune. She turned to him curiously and asked who this countess was, who was teaching her manners and etiquette, because her behavior seemed strange and abrupt. The teacher even froze for a moment, stopped eating, and thought as if he remembered something important, or was simply trying to find the right words. Mr. selected 2 mentors for her, but Anastasia decided not to rely blindly and wanted to test their knowledge by arranging some kind of test. The history teacher remarked that he had heard that the lady could read. He asked to call him if the student did not understand something or needed help. The second mentor, the same strict lady on etiquette, said that the girls knew almost nothing, and in her opinion, it would take a very long time to learn. It all seemed ridiculous, the Duke leaving his daughter in the care of such strange people. She couldn't help but laugh. It seemed so absurd. If it could console her in the slightest, the history teacher who worked with her remained completely confident in the correctness of his role and was glad to have the opportunity to teach her. At first, he patiently answered any questions she had about the book she had chosen. He explained the material over and over in different ways until she finally began to understand what was written. But over time, his attitude toward her began to change. Gradually, she began to talk about topics they hadn't even studied yet, and he began to listen to her more and more attentively. He asked her opinion more and more often, and it became clear that he had become a much better teacher. Sometimes between classes, they would discuss various topics, even the snacks they had eaten that day. Count Melioka came from a noble family, living in the capital. Unlike the other heirs, he was born in the center of the country and did not have much influence in the north. When he said they, he meant families like the Boreati, who from the earliest times stood in defense of the northern lands and possessed considerable power. If you look back in time, you will see that most of the noble aristocrats came from the Boreati family. Some representatives even had animal fangs. The giant mentioned people like Regina, who had a special blood and strength that distinguished them from others and commanded respect. Women like her and the former Lady Melioka, who were well known in high circles, were famous and influential figures in society. She was one of those who knew how to sting with words and never missed a chance to sow doubt using language as a weapon. She liked to control others through speech. Her words always contained a veiled insult or a caustic criticism disguised as politeness. These hidden stings were hidden under the mask of care and compliments, but those who were hurt by them could take a long time to recover. After all, the heart once wounded does not heal immediately. The girl was in tears, telling how the woman had harassed her too, without regard for others, or the consequences her complaints had been ignored. And now she didn't know what to do. Anastasia was silent for a long time, not responding with words or a look. She only sighed heavily, as if trying to contain what was building up inside. Then the girl quietly said that this was already the 3rd time this was happening, and each time her attempts to stop it ended in nothing. The woman mocked her, repeating that she was only an illegitimate daughter, as if this were a sentence and not part of her biography. She continued to watch Anastasia closely, pretending to fix her hair, but there was mockery and contempt in her eyes. She mocked Anastasia's good fortune in becoming the Duke's adopted daughter, as if it were an unworthy gift of fate. The last time Anastasia saw her, the Countess looked down on her, despite how much hard work the girl had to go through. The Duke had always said that this woman was sensible, but now Anastasia couldn't understand what he was even thinking about when he praised her. She had long since realized that she ignored all her ridicule, But if the lady so desperately dreamed of death, she would give it to her. The teacher was even frightened when she heard these words from the girl, feeling how much cold determination there was in them. The girl added that perhaps it was time to start listening to her and not pretend that nothing was happening. She noted that, in any case, everything would be told to the Duke as soon as he returned home, and it would be impossible to hide anything. She is one of the northern black beasts, and even at a young age, her cruelty and coldness were the same as the Duke himself. She was a predator, simply lying in wait for the right moment to show her power. And now that she has decided to act the family of the Countess, who teaches etiquette, seems destined to lose its honor. Later that evening, the maid asked if Anastasia was comfortable in bed, and she nodded soberly, confirming that everything was fine. The maid politely reminded her that if she suddenly needed anything, she just needed to ring the small silver bell on the bedside table, and she would immediately come to her aid. Anastasia wished her good night. She nodded goodbye to the girl with a slight smile, softly closed the door behind her, and almost silently walked away down the corridor, leaving Anastasia alone in a cozy but unfamiliar room for her. Lying under a light blanket, the girl thought about what had happened during the day, trying to put all the events in her head, from the trip to the castle to meeting the Duke and his servants. At some point, she stood up, went to the cabinet, and took out her favorite box of chocolates, the one she always hid away as the most valuable thing from the past. She carefully counted the candies one by one, and with each one moments came to mind when her father gave them to her for good behavior or just to please her. It turned out that there were even more sweets than before she arrived at the mansion, which meant that they were really trying to please her. This caused a strange but pleasant feeling of gratitude in her. It began to seem to her that the Duke had been absent for too long. She subconsciously waited for his steps in the corridor because he had promised to be there, but now he was gone for a long time. One day she woke up and realized that she was left all alone. An orphan. The realization of this pain did not come immediately, but now it has become part of her memories. Now everything is different. A man has appeared in her life who has become her adoptive father, as if from a novel, and this change was so unexpected that it seemed almost fictional. Thanks to the new conditions and care, Anastasia quickly became a real noble girl, polite, reserved, and well-mannered, as befits the daughter of a duke. Everything that was happening reminded her of a magical dream into which she had suddenly fallen, and now she didn't know when she would wake up, or whether she wanted to wake up at all. Her thoughts returned to the Duke. She really wanted him to come back soon, because she felt calmer with him, as if nothing bad could happen to him. With these thoughts, the girl settled back on the pillow, yawned, and decided it was time to fall asleep. New lessons awaited her tomorrow. In particular, important etiquette, which she had difficulties with so far. Meanwhile, the Duke was far from the castle, fighting monsters. He did it without fear or doubt, as if he had a special goal known only to him. With every move he made, he showed skill. His strikes were precise, accurate, and none of the creatures could resist his experience and determination. The tip of his sword easily cut through another monster, and it fell dead without even making a sound. Everything happened so quickly, as if death itself obeyed his will. After the battle, he approached one of the knights and asked an important question. It was necessary to know where the cubs of this creature could be, because the danger could still be nearby. But the knight reported that there were no traces or signs that the monster's offspring might be lurking nearby. Everything seemed safe, but the Duke did not relax. Without him, the knights managed to defend the mountains for 3 whole years, which seemed strange given the active mating season of the local creatures and their aggressive behavior at this time. Buffera is a monster that usually stays in caves with its offspring during mating season, preferring not to come out and carefully guard its offspring. This species is usually cautious until spring hunting small animals and mice. But during the mating season, it becomes especially aggressive, which noticeably changes its behavior. The monsters are now much more aggressive than the knights remembered, and the offspring of these creatures turned out to be completely hidden. They could not be found anywhere in the mountains. The gentleman explained that at first, the monsters would only descend from the mountain after a certain point when the conditions became more suitable for their offspring. After some time, the work that required attention and effort was successfully completed, and everyone could rest a little. The gentleman turned to Anna and she immediately approached him, realizing that an important assignment or discussion was about to follow. He said that Anna probably knew good places where they sold different sweets that would be suitable for children and asked her to help. Anna admitted that she wasn't sure if the kids would like these sweets, but she knew of a bakery that her brother often went to, and they always had a good selection. The gentleman understood her and asked what Anna's brother usually bought at this bakery in order to select suitable treats. The girl said that her brother loves to take fluffy puff pastries with cream, which resemble soft clouds. Children especially love their taste. In the next etiquette lesson, the teacher placed a book on the girl's head, forcing her to balance in order to develop posture and attention. The teacher said that this exercise is amazing and very useful, which should help the student become more confident and graceful. After that, she announced that the lesson for today should be finished, so as not to overtire the students and to give them time to rest. Despite this, the girl still looked at the teacher with some arrogance and pride, understanding the importance of these exercises. The lady did it again, showed her strictness and demandingness, forcing everyone to try even harder for success. Anastasia had already noticed that every time she bowed, the Duke looked at her with a special look, as if he was trying to convey something important without words, and this did not escape her attention. The teacher promised to explain everything to the Duke as soon as he returned and insisted that Anastasia should always remember her words, because it could affect the girl's future fate in this house. She emphasized that any mistake by Anastasia could have a negative impact on the Duke, his reputation and position, so her actions should be treated with great care and consideration. Such conversations became obligatory for Anastasia. She could not live a day without the teacher reminding her of the seriousness of the situation and her responsibility to the Duke. When the teacher tells the Duke the people who are guilty of hurting the Duke's daughter will not go unpunished, because the Duke really cares about her and will not allow her to be hurt. Despite the fact that Anastasia was adopted, her wounded heart could not return to normal for a long time, because the grievances she had experienced left deep scars, and it was very difficult to recover from this. She was in real pain, and the pain was almost physical. She felt alone and vulnerable in a world where every little thing could become a test. The teacher said that the lady is studying and developing very well, but at the same time, she needs to be very careful with her position, because luxury and status require endurance and responsibility. Anastasia asked again what exactly she meant when she spoke of her situation, trying to understand why it was so important and why there was a hidden threat behind it. The Countess bowed and explained that Anastasia should be grateful to the Duke for allowing her to live in such conditions surrounded by luxury and care, although she was only an adopted child. The Duke is the only reason the girl has all this, and so she should appreciate his help and understand how fragile her status in this house can be. This is why the teacher is going to continue talking to Anastasia and supporting her, explaining how to behave correctly so as not to harm herself and those who protect her. She was advised to make every effort not to become a hindrance to the Duke, but on the contrary, to be a support, and not to let down the one who gives her the opportunity to live in this world full of complex rules and conventions. The girl always listened carefully to what the Countess told her, trying to understand every word and the hidden meaning in her statements, because she knew that something important was hidden behind the words. She listened carefully to every sentence the Countess made, trying to catch the tone and intentions, because the Countess rarely spoke just like that, and her words carried deep meaning and warnings. The Countess valued her attention and understanding, as she saw in the girl not just a listener, but someone who was able to perceive and accept her views, which made their connection especially significant. The girl said that it was precisely because of this deep mutual understanding that she would never want to return here again, because the old place and relationship were now closed to her forever. From the first moment she saw this place, the girl felt something unpleasant, as if something inside her immediately rejected this environment and those who were there. The Countess seemed disgusting to her from the very beginning, and this feeling only grew stronger over time, creating an insurmountable barrier between them. The girl understood that beauty is not just appearance, but a real weapon and source of power that can be controlled and used to achieve what you want. No matter who a person is, if he is the most beautiful and knows how to use it, he automatically gains advantage and power over others. The Countess was confident in herself, and believed that her confidence would give her the opportunity to achieve everything she wanted without regard for other people's feelings. Including the Duke, who had recently taken a daughter for himself, the Countess saw in him not just a man, but a desired object that could become her property. He was strong and influential, and the Countess wanted to win him over, confident that this would strengthen her position and power. The decision to try to get the Duke seemed natural and logical to her, because he could be her key to greater success and influence. However, instead of the desired result, she was faced with a cold refusal and complete indifference from the Duke, which was an unexpected and painful blow for her. Because of this disappointment, she married a young man from a respectable family, and although these were good times, they could not compare with her previous plans and ambitions. She had not heard any rumors about Duke Boreati, as if it did not concern her. Everything happened as if by chance, and she could not imagine that such talk was going on about him. She found it incredibly difficult to believe that the Duke could have an illegitimate child. The idea seemed so strange and contradictory that she simply refused to accept it. She couldn't understand how it was even possible for a man like the Duke to have a secret child. It was almost impossible for her to imagine, since he seemed too closed off for such stories. Versulga's reputation was very special and unusual, especially in the capital, where all gossip quickly spread and became surrounded by rumors. Her position in this world was not as simple as it seemed. There were rumors that Versulga even managed to write a memorandum before going to bed so that no one would dare threaten her or the Duke. This added even more mystery and power to her in the eyes of those around her. But the main secret remained. Who was this girl from whom the Duke had a child? She decided that she had to personally check everything with her own eyes to understand the truth without unnecessary speculation. Even if it was jealousy that tormented her soul, she could not deny what was connected with the woman who gave birth to this child. Her feelings were mixed and complicated, causing her to doubt and suffer. She thought about the woman who had managed to arouse the Duke's interest to attract his attention. This was something new and incomprehensible to her, which required comprehension. And then there was this child. No one saw him, but he clearly received the Duke's love, and this feeling seemed to violate the usual order of things and rules around her. The girl who worshipped the Duke was clearly nervous. Her excitement was noticeable to everyone, and this spoke of how serious and tense everything was around this secret. From that moment on, the girl had to keep her head lower, be more reserved and careful in her position, so as not to attract unnecessary attention and not harm herself. But now, the girl herself said that she shouldn't come here anymore, as if she herself understood that her time in this place was over, and she needed to leave. Her surprise was great when she later heard the words, which even changed the expression on her face. The truth sounded so sharp and unexpected. Anastasia said that the lady did not understand at all what she was doing, and that they no longer wanted to see her at the Duke's, as if revealing a new unpleasant turn in the girl's fate. She announced that she was not going to continue this relationship, and now Griffin must leave herself making a decision without any conditions or reservations. She was informed about this in advance, so that she could leave on her own without unnecessary explanations and questions, preparing her for the fact that she would have to leave the situation without her intervention. The Countess was completely confused, not understanding how to properly respond to what she had heard, and did not know what to do next. Feeling inner turmoil and bewilderment, she got to her feet and tried to catch up with the girl who was quickly walking away, and her request to stop her sounded like genuine concern and a desire to understand what was happening. However, the maid and the knight strictly forbade the Countess to approach the girl, explaining that it was undesirable to interfere now, and it was better not to aggravate the situation. The girl said that everything was fine, suggesting that there had been some misunderstanding between all the participants in this conversation, and the situation was not that serious. However, she asked again what they were talking about, showing distrust and a desire to understand what exactly they were trying to explain to her. The gentleman believed that the girl might have hurt the lady's feelings, and therefore he should be careful in his communication so as not to aggravate the conflict. But the girl responded very sharply and uncompromisingly, not wanting to give in or soften her words, demonstrating her firmness and independence. The Countess was simply amazed by what was happening, unable to believe that she had just witnessed such a sharp change in the girl's behavior. She noticed that she had fangs that resembled the teeth of a calm animal, which spoke of a hidden power inside and a potential threat that was difficult to control. If the girl went berserk, the consequences could become irreversible, and then it would be impossible to correct the situation, which caused anxiety in those present. So the knight asked the maid to step aside, trying to create a safe space, but the maid did not have time to move far enough to avoid danger. The girl was emitting such powerful energy that everyone who was nearby was simply in shock, not understanding what exactly they were dealing with and how out of control the situation had gotten. The girl seemed confident, as if she had known about all this for a long time, and was prepared for the consequences of her words and actions, as if this was not something unexpected for her. She said that the Countess's words would remain in her heart forever, and would be kept there as the most precious memory that could not be forgotten under any circumstances. She had previously repeated that the Countess's words would remain in her heart for a long time, that they would warm her in difficult moments and support her on the hardest days. It was a moment when everything suddenly went quiet, and the situation took an irresponsible turn, as if no one knew what the right thing to do next was. The maid noticed that people had already left and thought that her lesson was over, so she could calmly go about her business and not disturb others. Everyone suddenly felt that something was wrong with the state, and this caused them unexpected surprise and slight concern. They felt a special aura from her, as if she herself knew that she had to reach the exit, and the girl said that the Countess would cope with it on her own. No one ever understood what exactly happened there, leaving everyone confused and guessing about the real reasons for what happened. Everyone understood that she needed to be calmed down urgently, otherwise the situation could get out of control and lead to irreparable consequences. He approached her and expressed a desire to accompany her, but the girl said that she wanted to walk alone to get some fresh air and collect her thoughts. The maid offered to go and get her coat so that the girl could safely go outside without fear of freezing or catching a cold. He calmed down because he realized that the lady was disappointed and did not want to talk now, so she simply remained silent, showing her inner state. Now she feels a little better and has calmed down a little after the stress and anxiety that had overwhelmed her earlier. Her fists clenched like animals at the unexpected provocation of the people, but then the tension gradually disappeared as she was able to regain her calm. If they had managed to go for a walk at that moment, the lady would have been completely calm and would have been able to forget about all her worries and troubles for a while. Many Countess did not have time to catch up with them, and this forced the lady to provoke her again with her sharp remark, as if testing the limits of her patience. The girl noticed that on the first day, the Countess accused her of stupidity, explaining that she was an illegitimate child, which seemed to put her below the others. On the second day, the Countess declared that the girl should be grateful for her good fortune, saying that she had been found and pulled out of poverty, as if she should have come to terms with it. Then it was said that the girl would lose all support no matter what efforts she might make, as if her fall was predetermined. The girl asked if the Countess really thought she could hide her dirty thoughts under the guise of beautiful words and remain undetected. Because of this reproach, the Countess suddenly burst into tears, as if her inner deception and hypocrisy had suddenly burst out through her tears. The girl asked again what exactly she had said today, and tried to understand whether the Countess had tried to justify herself in any way or change the course of the conversation. In response, I heard that all of this was just a misunderstanding, an attempt to absolve myself of responsibility for the words spoken. The Countess declared that the girl should know her place and not create any more problems, as if she was putting her in a strict position in the hierarchy. The girl wondered whether the Countess meant exactly this, or was trying to say something else, hiding the true meaning between the lines. Unlike the previous days, this time, the Countess managed to hide her true intentions very well, demonstrating the art of dissimulation and secrecy. It was interesting to find out what place the girl occupied in this house, because the situation seemed difficult, and her role in family life remained unclear to those around her. The girl thought that the Countess perceived her as an annoying newborn child, not appreciating or respecting her at all, as if she were just an annoying presence. In reality, she was just an orphan without a mother, ordinary and unremarkable, deprived of support and family, which made her situation even more vulnerable. The knight observing this immediately realized that they were having serious difficulties that needed to be resolved, otherwise the situation could get out of control. The girl managed to free her animal fangs, which in human conditions looked very dangerous and could lead to unpredictable consequences for those around her. She was strong, but at the same time, she had absolutely no control over her abilities, which made her unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Because of this, the knight, although he wanted to intervene, could not fully free himself and influence the situation, remaining in some confusion. It was clear to him that he had to stop the girl, otherwise everything could end badly, and he was ready to make every effort to achieve this. If the knight failed, no one knew what kind of troubles and destruction she could cause here, and this caused concern to everyone around. The only person who could stop her was the Duke, because his power and strength could control such situations and bring order. But the Duke was not around, and everyone understood that they couldn't do without him here. He would never have allowed the situation to get out of control. At that very moment, the Duke appeared, who immediately asked what was going on and why there was such disorder and tension in the house. He noted that he had already been told that Anastasia would be furious, and now he realized that this was indeed the case. The girl's anger was felt in everything. The Duke realized that it was necessary to teach his daughter manners and discipline so that she could control her emotions and behave appropriately. The knight was very glad that they had finally returned home and could now go to the bathroom to rest a little and tidy himself up. They were in a hurry because they wanted not only to stock up on alcohol, but also to have a good time, relax, and unwind. The evening promised to be eventful, and the rush gave them a special mood. They also wondered why the gentleman had not asked his charges to buy something tasty for the lady in advance, since it would have been much easier and more convenient than running around at the last moment. The knight explained that he had not thought that the gentleman would decide to buy the treat himself. He had assumed that he would delegate it to someone else, but circumstances had turned out differently. At the same time, the knight remembered that the lady had asked him to buy something tasty when he returned back, and therefore he simply wanted to fulfill this request without unnecessary conversations. He said that it was Anastasia who asked to purchase this specific thing, a point with a treat which was especially desired and important for her at that moment. Therefore, the knight considered it his duty to buy it himself in order to please the lady and not let her down, despite the fact that this added trouble. When he entered the store, everyone around was a little scared by the unexpected visit, but he calmly asked for an airy cream puff light and tender like a cloud. At that moment, the seller was definitely not going to sleep. Such a late request was rare, and this night would certainly be remembered for a long time. The knight was sure that the lady would be happy if she received a treat. He hoped that she would not complain, because perhaps they were already waiting for them right at the entrance, ready to enjoy the evening. However, the gentleman said that it was time for sleep, and perhaps the lady was already waiting for him to spend the evening together, despite her fatigue and the late hour. He imagined Anastasia asking him why he had come home so late. He saw her look in his mind's eye, a little reproachful, a little anxious, and it awakened a strange feeling in him. The thought made him smile involuntarily, as if he had found comfort and understanding within himself. His smile was short but sincere, because it was in that moment that he felt connected to her. But then they both noticed how Anastasia used her fangs, wild and sharp like an animal's. It was unexpected, but there was a power and nature in this gesture that could not be hidden. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw it for the first time. At that very moment, he understood what this transformation meant and what powers were hidden in it. Everything became crystal clear. The Duke immediately ordered everyone to quickly leave the place so as not to complicate the situation. His voice was strict, peremptory, and no one dared to contradict him. The knight tried to go with the Duke and said that they should stick together, but the Duke replied that they would only get in the way and that he could handle it himself. These were young animals who had yet to be trained and raised. They did not yet know how to control their feelings and strength. Everything was new and unpredictable. Sometimes they couldn't contain their emotions, and because of this, they would briefly show their fangs, a small sign of the internal struggle and the wild nature that sat inside. If the child had summoned enough fangs to take over the entire estate, then one could be sure that only one person could have caused the event. The Duke walked inside and carefully picked up his daughter. He knew that what she needed most now was support and peace. He tried to calm her down somehow, making every effort to make her anxiety and fears disappear and to make her feel safe again. He noticed that she seemed to have bitten harder than she could bear, which meant that there was not only emotion raging inside her, but also real pain that was hard to control. After a while, he completely removed all the fangs that were in his mouth. This removal seemed like a momentous moment, as if a chapter of strange events that had recently occurred was being closed. After that, he asked the knight to tell him what exactly had happened at that moment. He wanted to understand the essence of what had happened and the reasons for the unusual behavior of all the participants. The knight apologized for not being able to properly protect the lady. He felt guilty and regretted not being able to prevent trouble. It would be wrong for him to speculate about Milady's motives, but as far as he could tell, the Countess had offended her, and that could be the cause of tension. It seemed that the Countess allowed herself to make some prophetic and possibly caustic remarks to the lady, which only aggravated the situation and added fuel to the fire. Several minutes passed, and the knight could not believe that the Duke still had not drawn his sword. It seemed strange and even illogical, given what was happening. He noticed that the girl was feeling unwell. She had a high temperature, and her condition was causing concern and alarm to everyone around her. The knight noted with some irony that it was funny how all this happened at the moment when he was leaving, as if the events were connected with his absence. He simply walked past the Countess, not paying any attention to her, and not entering into conflict, although the tension in the air remained palpable. Ivan believed that every person should have some kind of dying wish that he would like to fulfill at the last moment of his life. With the help of his fangs, he killed the Countess, which became an important and decisive act in this story, influencing the further course of events. He said that he would fulfill these dying wishes, because since she knelt before him, it meant that their fulfillment was now his duty and responsibility. Already at night, the girl opened her eyes and realized that she was lying in her bed, and gradually came to her senses after what she had experienced. She got out of bed and saw her father next to her, who seemed to be there to support and protect her in this difficult moment. He said that she still had a fever, and therefore needed to lie down again to avoid making it worse, and to give her body a chance to recover. She looked at him carefully and noted that he looked very beautiful and calm in the night light, which gave him a special charm. She asked with interest when he had managed to return, and the gentleman said that he had arrived 2 days ago. During this time, she had slept completely and had not noticed anything around her. All these days, the girl was in a deep sleep, as if immersed in another world, not feeling time or what was happening around her, as if protected from everything external. She thought that the reason for this condition was due to the sharp teeth of the animals, which seemed to affect her well-being and sleep, causing weakness and fatigue. He confirmed her suspicions, saying that it was indeed so. She hid under the blanket, admitting that it made her feel sick and uncomfortable, and that was why she was hiding. He, slightly surprised, asked why she spoke so formally and reservedly, as if trying not to show her true feelings and avoid details. She answered this way because she thought she had done something wrong, but he did not understand what exactly had caused her anxiety and confusion, and therefore remained somewhat perplexed. The girl admitted that the incident happened because of her, but he did not consider it a serious incident, perceiving the situation much calmer than she did. He assumed she meant using her powers, and she confirmed this, emphasizing the importance of the moment, which caused complications. Her condition remained critical, much worse than it had been after crossing the gate when her strength was depleted, and her body suffered greatly. He asked again if she had done it on purpose, trying to understand whether her behavior was conscious and intentional or accidental. At that moment, she was not as shy and withdrawn as she was now, when every reaction she made seemed reserved and cautious, as if she was afraid of doing something wrong. The girl admitted that she did it deliberately, although she was angry, realizing that the situation had gotten out of control, and her actions had led to undesirable consequences. The Countess strictly noted that Anastasia must know her place and understand how to behave correctly in order to avoid similar incidents in the future. She didn't know where she belonged in this world, and then she asked about it. Everything around her seemed strange and incomprehensible, and inside there was a growing feeling of emptiness and loneliness. The day she opened her eyes, it was as if she had become a different person, As if her old self had dissolved, giving way to something new and vulnerable. She turned into a small, weak child who could barely cope with the weight of life, and the whole world seemed huge and scary to her. She had no family in this world, no one to support her, no one to protect her from adversity and pain. She had no place to find peace, no place to go to recuperate when fatigue weighed on her body and soul. And of course, she didn't have those things that were always with her, that brought at least a drop of comfort and hope in the gray, everyday life. But she couldn't even cry. The tears, like the feelings, were somewhere far away, hidden under a layer of hopelessness and constant struggle. After all, simply surviving in this cruel world was incredibly difficult. Every new day brought new trials and suffering. Amidst the constant changes and grievances, she was able to make only one promise to herself, which became her only support and goal. She decided to survive at any cost and take revenge on those who hurt her and made her life miserable and hard. She asked the gentleman, who she really was trying to find, at least a grain of truth about herself. She confessed that, in reality, she was just an orphan without memories or roots lost in this big world. Despite everything, she considered herself a lucky adopted child because her fate could have been even worse without those who took her in. She was a daughter who escaped from the past, completely different from who she was, before fate brought her together with the main character, like a miracle, and this moment became a turning point in her life. After this event, she was given a new name, Anastasia. It seemed to symbolize the beginning of a new path, another life where she could forget everything that had happened before. She received much better treatment than she could have imagined. The care and attention of those around her helped her recover faster than she thought possible. The kindness and warmth that emanated from them melted her frozen heart. Little by little, she began to open up and trust those around her. Despite this, she still had the feeling that there was nothing here that truly belonged to her alone. Everything seemed foreign and temporary, as if she were still a guest. The Countess constantly reminded Anastasia that she should know her place. These words deeply hurt that part of the girl that she tried to hide and not notice. In the original story, Duke Boreati never had an adopted daughter, a fact that made her appearance even more strange and unexpected. In that story, Anastasia didn't appear at all, so no one understood why such a stranger as she suddenly appeared in this world before the story itself began. The girl had often felt that her place here was not hers, and this feeling brought her to tears when it seemed that no one around her accepted her. Duke Boreati noticed her tears and came up to her carefully, taking her hand, showing that she was not alone and that he cared. She raised her head, and he saw how much she had been crying. Her eyes were red, and her face was distorted with pain and despair. He smiled unexpectedly, and this smile seemed so strange and unexpected to her that she was frightened. She was overcome with anxiety. She did not understand why he was behaving like this. The girl couldn't understand why he was laughing like that now. His laughter was unpredictable and seemed mysterious to her. She tried to figure out the reason for his behavior, but to no avail. He explained that he was not laughing at her at all, although she noticed his smile and realized that he was laughing because she looked funny or stupid in that situation. He continued speaking, as if asking himself and her at the same time if she realized how ridiculous she looked from the outside right now, as if trying to convey a simple truth to her. His words sounded like it was an empty cause for concern, that all of this, in his opinion, was stupid and not worth the emotions she was experiencing. She responded sharply, emphasizing that in this situation, it was he who was acting stupidly, and that this was the whole point of their misunderstanding. She decided that it was all just idiocy, meaningless experiences, and ridiculous attempts to explain something that defied logic. At that moment, she noticed his muscles, and he was surprised how she could think about such things when the situation was far from simple and required seriousness. She admitted to herself that she simply loved very much, and because of this, her feelings were so strong that she could not do anything about it. Love controlled her. He thought that she felt like she wasn't sick enough or didn't take it seriously enough, and that made him a little uneasy. Connie ended up in the hospital because she suffered minor injuries after her fangs were used that required medical attention. The maid was surprised when she saw that a lady had come to see her because it was unexpected, and did not happen often that representatives of high circles came to the hospital. She asked what brought the lady there, but the girl quietly told her to stay in bed and not get up, emphasizing the importance of rest and recovery. The girl said that she should not get up because she felt weak and did not want to risk her condition. She decided to wait and not rush so as not to worsen the situation. She just came to check if everything was okay with Coney. She was worried about how she was feeling after the recent events and wanted to make sure that everything was okay with her, and there were no problems. The girl apologized to the maid for disturbing her and brought her some cookies as a token of her gratitude and care. It was a small gesture of attention that helped ease the tension a little. She assured that the pain caused was not too severe, and the maid felt quite well. She had no serious injuries, and everything was healing quickly. People were very worried because they hoped that no one was hurt and no one was seriously injured. It was important for everyone to keep everyone healthy. The maids thought that the Duke had probably scolded the girl severely for what had happened because he usually did not forgive mistakes, especially if someone had been hurt. In addition, they noted that they had not had such a good rest for a long time. Apparently, recent events allowed everyone to relax a little and forget about problems. They also hoped that Sir Knight was okay, because he was also a participant in these events and could have suffered, so they were worried about his health. The maid said that in fact, Mrs. Connie and Gabriel meet quite often, support each other, and communicate on important issues. Connie explained that today was simply an expression of gratitude for what Sir Knight had done for her on that memorable day. She wanted to express her appreciation. The maid smiled and said that if Connie said that, it meant they understood her and accepted her feelings, even if it was unusual for their circle. Connie noticed that she had the same expression on her face as her mother, indicating that she had inherited her character and demeanor. In fact, they are now resting, and their health has improved significantly a couple of days ago. Everyone feels better, and their mood is up. They are very grateful that the girl is so worried about them, and the lady believes that there is no need to apologize for the care shown. This only emphasizes their closeness and trust. The girl was very happy when she noticed the history teacher. Her face immediately came alive, and a spark of joy lit up in her eyes. She had been waiting for this meeting for a long time and was glad to see a familiar person. The maid sternly reminded her that a lady should not run around the corridors like that. It was not proper. The teacher, noticing her anxiety, thought that the girl probably felt much better than before, and this pleased him. The girl confidently said that she was perfectly fine and felt great. However, the teacher knew that this woman, despite all her efforts, would still cause them a lot of trouble someday. When he was in the capital, the girl was still a student of a local nobleman named Serena. At that time, the support group systematically bullied one of the girls at a Soviet meeting, and this left a mark on the teachers. After that incident, the girl cried so much that the memories of that day still tormented both the maid and the teacher, leaving a shadow of anxiety over their thoughts. The maid could not understand why they would treat a member of the Boreati family so cruelly, because such behavior was completely unacceptable and contradicted everything they had been taught. The girl, observing the conversation, asked why the dispute had arisen in the first place, what had caused the discontent and quarrel between the parties. She wanted to understand the root of the conflict. The maid could not believe that her subordinates could be so bold and brave as to allow themselves such harsh words and actions without thinking about the consequences. She even thought that the girl was behaving like a wild animal from the north. So indomitable and brave did she seem in the eyes of the maid, as if from a completely different environment. The teacher noted that such behavior had a negative effect on emotional development, but the girl decided not to stop and asked about the gentleman's condition, showing a keen interest. At this time, the gentleman was holding an important meeting, listening attentively to reports, and considering further actions which spoke of the seriousness of his position and responsibility. He calmly drank a mug of tea, sat completely relaxed, but at the same time closely followed the course of events, controlling everything that was happening without unnecessary haste. For those who don't know, this was the very first brand of drink that was preferred by children from noble families when they wanted something refreshing and unusual. Such a drink was considered a symbol of nobility. However, this is not at all what Duke Boreati would drink, because he had his own preferences and tastes, which did not at all coincide with the usual choice of young nobles. They called him Peter, so that everyone would understand that Lady Grey was so called because of its deep black color, which evoked associations with something mysterious and strong. This color meant something important to the Duke. It was like his reign, which always accompanied him, like a symbol of darkness and immutability, connected with his character and destiny. Lady Grey was also associated with Anastasia, on the day the Duke took her from the orphanage. The moment her life began a new chapter full of mystery and change. This child, whom the door called Golden, was respected in the family, although he remained a mystery to many, like a special figure important to all loved ones. Since then, there have been many rumors, and everyone has put their own, sometimes completely opposite meaning into them, which only fueled interest and gossip around this story. Among these rumors were some very cruel ones that could hurt and separate people, but they continued to spread regardless of whether they were true or false. After all this, an important moment occurred that changed a lot and became the beginning of new events that determined the future fate of the Duke and Anastasia. The gentleman asked when the Duke had last shown the northern point, as if trying to understand how long ago the time that was important to them had passed. It turned out that this happened about 3 years ago, or rather 3 years and 2 months have passed if you count from today, and this had great significance for subsequent events. He had a strange feeling that all 4 important moments were already behind him, as if he had passed through them, and now something had changed in the air around him. It was a feeling of relief and a little anxiety at the same time. He stood up and walked slowly among the other men, watching each of them carefully, as if trying to understand what motivated their actions and how they related to each other. The atmosphere seemed tense but important. He felt something unusual near one of the men, as if real work was taking place there, done with great skill and attention. Everything looked well coordinated, as if everything was arranged perfectly. When Lupa left the room, he was very happy, because he was finally able to break out of this vicious circle, approaching the very moment he had been waiting for a long time, the point where everything would change. But as soon as he left, Anastasia grabbed him by the arm, not letting him go any further. She stopped him, forcing him to pay attention to her, and there was something important and urgent in her gaze. He looked in surprise towards where Anastasia was standing and noticed that she said something to him, addressing him directly. Although he did not expect such a turn of events and her sudden persistence, she was smart and witty. Her words rang with a subtle irony and depth that left no doubt that she was in control of the situation and knew much more than it seemed at first glance. He saw her as simply a happy and proud child whose inner strength and self-confidence made everyone around her listen to her and respect her despite her young age and external ease. He called those people who were completely unaware of what was happening and were going their own way, unaware of the scale of what was happening, hoping that he could change their views and attract real allies to the cause. The Duke underestimated the siren, considering her weak and insignificant, but in vain. He brought her closer to the child, not suspecting that this decision would change the whole situation and make him look at everything differently. This made him the same as the others, who did not understand the essence of what was happening, turning him into one of them, who had lost the ability to control the course of events and influence them. Children are not just pets, and while the Duke was away, they organized everything quickly and clearly, acting in a coordinated and confident manner, so that no one could stop their plans and interference. It was truly a sight to behold, and it was at that moment that he realized that everything was moving towards a point where the changes would become irreversible and the old order would never return. Then she also turned to the Count, the husband of the Countess, who was a teacher, trying to understand his opinion and reaction to what was happening. But fear and indecision were visible in his eyes. She asked him what he thought about it, but the words remained unspoken, because he himself did not know how to react to the new circumstances and changes that were quickly gaining momentum. He was so frightened that he could not even find the right words to answer, and his confusion became more and more noticeable, especially in the presence of those who expected decisiveness from him. The Duke turned to the gentleman, showing interest and trying to find out how his wife was doing, trying to move the conversation to a calmer channel and understand how serious the situation was on their side. The man immediately spoke, expressing deep regret, as if he truly regretted what had happened. His voice was full of sincerity and remorse before the Duke. He fell on his knees, showing his respect and sincere repentance, hoping in this way to show the seriousness of his feelings and his readiness to correct the mistake. The Countess apparently allowed herself to make overly sarcastic and caustic remarks about the young league, which caused tension among those present. By order of the Master, no investigation was carried out into the rumors that were circulating around the young lady, deciding not to attach any importance to them and not to make a fuss. Among these rumors were those that were spread with obvious malice and intent to harm despite their dubious veracity. Many northern aristocrats were involved in these intrigues who for unknown reasons were drawn into this dirty game. He saw his daughter unable to hold back her tears, and this sight deeply touched his soul, awakening in him a burning determination. He firmly decided that he would certainly destroy everyone who was involved in these intrigues and would harm his family. To do this, he used his beast power, the very one that gave him unprecedented strength and control over the situation. He announced that from that day on, everyone who entered his family would become his eyes and ears, watching every movement around them. He absolutely did not want to see or hear about Serenia, who was a teacher and had influence over the family's affairs. There would be no second chance. This was his firm warning he was not going to back down. He did not forbid them from continuing to spread rumors, but he made it clear that he would not fight it personally. He saw no point in dealing with those who seemed to be asking for their own death, running around uselessly with threats. Instead, he chose to rest quietly by the fireplace, in the company of his daughter, finding comfort and peace in it. This was his first and last warning. He made it clear that he would not tolerate it any longer. They must remember that they will be under constant surveillance, and any violation will not go unpunished. Meanwhile, the girl drank tea, noting that the drink was very tasty and warming at that moment. Lupa turned out to be very developed and capable. She liked it, and she admitted that she expected difficulties with printing, but everything went smoothly. The girl suggested that Mr. Lupa might have gotten hurt, which raised some concerns about his health. The gentleman said that he was working in his office when he suddenly felt a strange discomfort that made him wary. His body began to sweat heavily, and his heart immediately began to beat wildly and quickly, causing anxiety and discomfort in his soul. The Fangs of the Beast is a very powerful and strong ability that brings its owner tremendous strength and influence. The girl lowered her eyes, realizing that she was, to some extent, to blame, albeit a little, for what had happened. If you think about it, she really did want to destroy the siren, even though she didn't fully understand the consequences. In the novel, the beast's fangs were described as the most powerful force a person could possess in this world. This is a power that cannot be defeated, even if you use mana and aura, two magical energies at the same time. In addition, the Duke uses this ability to more easily manage his power and subordinates. This power does not look impressive from the outside, but its possession causes fear and awe in those around it. People who have such power often become too arrogant and self-confident, which is dangerous for themselves. A striking example of this are the children of aristocrats who rely only on the status of their families and do not know how to think for themselves. Those who are now scared to death in the conference room are precisely from this category. Their pride often plays a cruel joke on them. Only the miladies among them are able to soberly assess the influence of their powers and not lose their heads from their power. Lupa turned to her, telling her that she shouldn't think about it too much so as not to complicate her life. The girl replied that she was no longer a child and understood perfectly well what was happening around her and how everything worked. At that moment, the Duke entered the room and immediately turned his attention to Anastasia, starting a conversation with her.